Hi, beautiful people. Happy Saturday. Saturday now. I hope that y'all are having, some of y'all probably sleep. Catch the replay, whatever. I had trouble this time choosing what we were going to talk about today. And then I realized it was the late Reverend Jesse Jackson's funeral. So I'm gonna play a part of the speech now. It was a 5-hour funeral. We're not gonna get through all that. We're not gonna get through it. But I will play some of it for you. The former President Obama spoke, and then we'll listen to, I think Biden was right after him. Everything I shared for educational purposes, so we can talk about it, and then we'll see what Donald Trump has to say after that. Okay, you guys. Alrighty. Let me get to this video. Where is it? It's here. I don't know where I want to be. Hang on. Sorry, I'm trying to see. There we go. Let's see what the former president had to say. Good morning, Jerome. Thank you so very much for your donation and for your support. I appreciate you. Your life to the whole world. The heck does that mean? Scott, don't make me nervous. Jerome, thank you. Appreciate you and all of you that support my channel and my commentary. It's so hard to do because it's not that popular sometimes. And action, Mercy. That made me nervous. Let me get to my video. Thank you, Jerome. Okay, it was a big.
The book.
I think this is the beginning right here.
The book of Isaiah. Where are you?
Don't tell me. Oh, that's not gonna work. Hang on, guys.
I believe in the Constitution.
You don't want that. There we go.
The book of Isaiah. God is looking for a messenger to guide a hardened and resistant people. And the Lord asks, whom shall I send? And who will go with us? To which Isaiah replies, here I am, Lord. Send me. To Mother Jackson and the Jackson family, to President and Mrs. Biden, President and Secretary Clinton, Vice President Harris, Pastor Dates, my old friend, though he looking good, Reverend Meeks, Reverend Jenkins. It is an honor to join you today to celebrate the Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson, a man who, when the poor and the dispossessed needed a champion, and the country needed healing, stepped forward again and again and again and said, send me. Reverend Jackson's immense gifts were apparent at an early age, even if his circumstances conspired to try to hold him back. Born out of wedlock to a teenage mom, growing up under the oppressive cloud of segregation, confined to schools, sports facilities, movie theaters that were separate and unequal. It was a world where on Thanksgiving he'd have to wait for his mother to come home on the bus carrying leftovers from the dinner she had to cook for somebody else. A world designed to tell a child that he or she could only go so far. That to think otherwise would be foolish or dangerous. And that wisdom required you to accept your lot in life. And young Jesse refused to accept that verdict. He was a born leader, an athlete, a talker, knew how to talk, star quarterback, student body president. He could have succeeded within the con for him and had a successful life. But like so many of his generation, so many extraordinary civil rights leaders in the late 50s and 60s, that Joshua generation, he instinctively understood that individual success meant nothing unless everybody was free. So he became inspired by the bus boycotts in Montgomery. He led 7 black students into the whites-only library, sitting down and getting arrested for reading. Think about that. The library closed, but then it reopened. And when it did, it was open to everyone. Send me, Jesse said, even as a young man, and the world got a little bit better. By the time Reverend Jackson graduated from college, he had attended Chicago Theological Seminary. He knew the nature of his calling, and he became, as everybody knows, the youngest member of SCLC, assigned to lead Operation Breadbasket here in Chicago, right around the time that Isaiah Thomas is talking about. And it was during this period, and especially after Dr. King's death, when the optimism of the early movement had begun to fade and leadership had begun to fracture, and when the country seemed to have grown bored, gotten weary of the idea of justice and equality, and moved on to other concerns, that Reverend Jackson rose above despair and kept that righteous flame alive. Through Operation Push, he led boycotts and challenged corporate policies around hiring and contracting, recognizing that civil rights without economic justice was an empty promise. He backed unions in their organizing efforts and activists in fair wage campaigns, understanding that if the have-nots and the have-little bits ever learned to make common cause across racial lines instead of fighting each other over breadcrumbs, everybody would benefit. He helped register millions of voters. He fought against biases in the criminal justice system. He drew attention to local abuses of power and called folks at the national level to account. And by the early 80s, he was delivering that message of change and hope across the globe, freeing hostages from captivity, fighting to end apartheid in South Africa, And then, in 1984, as the powers that be in Washington were rolling back hard-won progress, slashing the social safety net, when more and more folks were getting left behind, and greed was being trumpeted as a virtue. See, we've been there before. He stepped forward once again and said, "Send me." He ran for the presidency of the United States of America. I had just graduated from college during that first campaign. And I was living in New York at the time. I was working to pay off my student loans, eating a lot of tuna fish and camel soup. And if I went to a diner, you know, I'd grab some extra crackers, put them in my pocket. And I was inspired by the civil rights movement. And I had in my mind to work for social justice. But even though I was full of good intentions, I was uncertain of how to serve and fighting off self-doubt. And I remember how, at the time, plenty of people, including, I'm sorry, plenty of black folks, were dismissing Jesse's chances. Suggesting, oh, he just wants attention, he can only get black votes. But then I remember one night sitting in my janky apartment, and I got an old black and white TV with the rabbit ears, and I'm kind of jiggering around, and it's about this big. I know young people can't imagine, but the TV was about this big. And I'm watching the Democratic primary debate between him and Walter Mondale and Gary Hart. And I remember how when that debate was over, I turned off that TV and I thought the same thing that I know a lot of people thought that night, even if they didn't want to admit it. That in his ideas, in his platform, in his analysis, in his intelligence, in his insight, Jesse hadn't just held his own. He had owned that stage. He wasn't an intruder. He wasn't a pretender. He belonged on that stage. And the message he sent to a 22-year-old child of a single mother with a funny name, an outsider, was that maybe there wasn't any place, any room where we didn't belong. And that message of fairness and dignity, of justice and hope, that's what the Rainbow Coalition was all about. In 1984, and then again in 1988, Jesse didn't just speak to black folks, he spoke to white folks and Latinos and Asian Americans and the first Americans. He spoke to family farmers and environmentalists. He spoke to gay rights activists when nobody was talking to gay rights activists and blue-collar workers. And he gave them the same message, that they mattered, that their voices and their votes counted. He invited them to believe, he invited us to believe in our own power, to change America for the better. By the delegate count, Jesse's two candidacies ultimately came up short. But he paved the road for so many others to follow. Doug Wilder became the first elected black governor. Carol Moseley Braun went to the U.S.
Before I'm gonna let this play, and we're not gonna get through all this. This is a lot. I'm gonna hold my thoughts about it. Listen, you guys. This is what's happening right now. I didn't say Obama was a good president or a bad president. I just play whatever's happening. The only thing I do wish, Democrats, is that you guys would not use every opportunity to slam the Republicans. That's really my only criticism with this speech right now. And you might catch it in the speech, but
because of Jesse, the Democratic Party changed its rules, ending the winner-take-all distribution of delegates during presidential primaries, which meant underdogs and outsiders like Bill Clinton or Bernie Sanders could stay competitive and build momentum instead of getting knocked out early. And it was because of that path that he had laid, because of his courage, his audacity, that 2 decades later, a young black senator from Chicago's South Side will even be taken seriously as a candidate for the presidential nomination. I still credit that first run of Justice and Harold Washington's campaign for drawing me to Chicago. And I didn't know anybody when I first arrived. And I was working as a community organizer, as it so happens, in neighborhoods right around here. Roseland, Woodlawn, Alt Gill, West Pullman, and I'm meeting these young preachers like Meeks and some crazy priest named Flager. And I guess Jenkins was running around, but he's kind of young. He came a little bit later, but I'm going to churches and I'm listening to all these amazing preachers and it was hard work, and half the time I didn't know what I was doing, and progress was slow, and I definitely didn't know how I was going to survive these Chicago winters, because I grew up in Hawaii. But I do remember heading to the PUSH headquarters some Saturday mornings to listen and learn from Reverend Jackson. And y'all remember how on some mornings, if there was a major issue going on, the room would be packed to the rafters. And sometimes some celebrity just wanders in. And then some mornings it was kind of low key. Either way, though, the announcements would be made, and Reverend Barrow would say a prayer, and just he'd sit there, and then finally he'd gather himself up and stand, and he'd start kind of slow, you know, and sometimes he'd talk kind of low, so you couldn't quite catch what he was saying. So everybody lean in, and over time, it was that same boundless energy that would emerge, and that same passion and that same insight. And he'd offer you a master class in economics on a Saturday morning. And he'd give you a seminar in American history and American politics. And he'd make complicated things plain And he'd tell stories that would make you laugh 1 minute and cry the next. And whether you were a bus driver or a teacher or a business leader or a young organizer, you came away from those meetings with a better understanding of how the world worked, how power worked. And more importantly, he made you believe that if we came together, we could make the world work better. Now, we've been talking about Jesse telling us we are somebody. I am somebody. And he wasn't just talking to young black boys like Isaiah, though he loved them fiercely. He wasn't just talking to young black girls to help them believe, though he believed in them. He was talking about everyone who was left out, everyone who was forgotten, everyone who was unseen, everyone who was unheard. And in that sense, he was expressing the very essence of what our democracy should be. The ideals at the very heart of the American experiment. The belief that regardless of what we look like or how we worship, regardless of where our ancestors come from or how much money we got, we're all part of the American family. We're all endowed with the same inalienable rights to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. We're all obligated to answer the call and step forward and take responsibility for making wrongs right and for caring for our neighbors and bringing the reality of America a step closer to its glorious ideals. And answering that call isn't always easy. And Reverend Jackson and his family knew that better than most. To do what he did, he would endure all kinds of hatred and setbacks and betrayals and doubters and death threats. He would sacrifice, as Jim Reynolds pointed out, the leisure and comfort of what was available to him as a far more financially secure life. And those sacrifices were not his alone. They were shared by his wife and his children. And they bore that burden with grace and strength. I got to know the Reverend and his family over the years, and as I watched his children follow his example of service, I came to appreciate the conviction that drove him, that he had passed on, the faith that guided him and that he had passed on. And it was a faith that didn't waver, a flame that burned bright, even as his body began to fail. The last time he and I had a chance to visit in person, he was already ailing. It was getting difficult for him to stand, difficult for him to speak. We were in Hyde Park, in a hotel room. I embraced him and figured we'd just have a low-key visit. Maybe he'd need some rest. And he starts coming up with this project and this initiative and issues I needed to look into. And here's some commentary that he would suggest, and some phrasing that he thought might work, and maybe we might co-write an article. And listening to him, I couldn't help smiling because it took me back. And I started reminiscing with him about those Saturday mornings at Push and the breakfast that he'd host, you know, away from the full meeting. And I didn't get a chance to go to that until I was a state senator, and probably Meeks invited me. So I was like, you know, I was tagging along with Meeks, and he'd pull out a piece of paper. You know, he'd scribbled some stuff, and he'd start passing out assignments.
Hi, Aaron.
And pulling together working groups and asking for updates on the latest campaign. And I'll admit, let's face it, those sessions could run a little long and did not always follow Robert's Rules of Order. But when Jesse called your name and acknowledged you in that room, especially if you were young, especially if you were just coming up, especially if you weren't sure you could pull off what you thought you might be able to do, especially when you needed help. When he did that, you stood up a little straighter. You knew you'd been seen by this giant. He'd laid hands on you and let you know you had a contribution to make. And so that day, I told him how much that meant to me and how much it meant to so many lives that he impacted. And I told him, thank you, because I'd always be grateful for that legacy of hope. I know I've gone long. It was going to be much shorter until Isaiah spoke. I figure if a Detroit Piston can take up this much time.
You just realized Obama spoke for about 28 minutes.
It was beautiful, and I mean that.
I didn't realize he spoke so long. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Love me some Isaiah.
First.
We are living in a time when it can be hard to hope.
Jerome.
Each day we wake up to some new assault on our democratic institutions.
I really could have fast forwarded to this part because this is what bugged me, but let me shut up.
Another setback to the idea of the rule of law. An offense to common decency. Every day you wake up to things you just didn't think were possible. Each day we're told by those in high office to fear each other and to turn on each other. And that some Americans count more than others, and that some don't even count at all. Everywhere we see greed and bigotry being celebrated, and bullying and mockery masquerading as strength. We see science and expertise denigrated, while ignorance and dishonesty and cruelty and corruption are reaping untold rewards. Every single day we see that. And it's hard to hope in those moments. So it may be tempting to get discouraged, to give in to cynicism. It may be tempting for some to compromise with power and grab what you can, or even for good people to maybe just put your head down and wait for the storm to pass. But this man, Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson, inspires us to take a harder path. His voice calls on each of us to be heralds of change, to be messengers of hope, to step forward and say, send me. Wherever we have a chance to make an impact, whether it's in our school or our workplaces or our neighborhoods or our cities, not for fame, not for glory, or because success is guaranteed, but because it gives our life purpose. Because it aligns with what our faith tells us God demands. And because if we don't step up, no one else will. How fortunate we were that Jesse Jackson answered that call.
You are
What a
23,
great
B-Rad?
debt
Okay.
we owe to him. May God bless Reverend Jackson.
God bless. What is that?
May he rest in eternal peace. God bless you.
That's okay. Let me get a break. But do y'all need a break from this? Should I go to
Can't
front
kid
now?
yourselves about what's right and wrong. President Obama, President Mrs. Clinton, Vice President Harris.
Do y'all need a break?
Jesse believes the Bible tells us that they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not grow faint. I hope the hell you all got that, but you're going to need help getting out of here.
You guys be respectful in the chat. Rest in peace. Honestly, I do mean that. Rest in peace to Jesse Jackson. Honestly, rest in peace.
I come from Scranton, Pennsylvania initially, where the fact that I was an Irish Catholic wasn't a very positive thing to be. And then moved down to Wilmington, Delaware, which is so.
I have sick humor, you guys. Honestly, rest in peace. I mean that. I respect life. But y'all gotta understand how I feel about some of these speakers. I'm trying, especially for my Democratic friends. I'm trying for you guys. Okay? So don't be mad at me. Don't be mad at me. I'm not trying to be disrespectful
by law.
at all.
And remained that way for much of my life. And, you know, it's interesting that Jesse Jackson, before we knew Jesse Jackson,
You're welcome.
I was raised with the notion that that hope is all you really have. You can't give up hope. My dad used to say, when you get knocked down, Joey, just get up. Just get up. Well, I was a kid. I was a relatively good athlete, a pretty good student. But
Okay, guys, I need a break. I gotta break this up. I'm so sorry. Don't be mad at me. I tried. But after him, then it's Kamala. I need a break. I love you guys though. Okay, if you want me to, I'll come back to it. Let me let me go to a roundtable talk. I love you guys. Don't be mad. We still friends. But I gotta wake up right now. Dr. Van, I can come back to it. Remind me to come back to it. Remind me. Okay, let's do a roundtable. Actually, before we get to Trump, let's go here. Let's go here. Okay. We'll remind me to come back. I enjoy her so much. Oh wait.
Terrorist regime is being absolutely crushed.
Whew.
47 years of tolerating and enabling the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism are over. Iran's murderous terrorist leaders are paying for their crimes against America, and they are paying in blood. Since 1979, the terrorist Iranian regime has actively and intentionally facilitated the killings of Americans. They chant death to America and fund other radical terrorists who attack our country and are seeking to destroy Western civilization itself. These terrorists seized our embassy and took 66 Americans hostage in Tehran. They slaughtered 241 U.S. service members with a truck bombing in Beirut. They killed and maimed hundreds of American service members in Iraq. And this is just a small fraction of their blood-soaked record. Prior leaders have been too weak and ineffective to address this threat. Some, like Barack Hussein Obama, even sent pallets of cash that ultimately financed this terrorist crusade against the United States and our people. while signing stupid and naive deals that put Iran on the path of developing nuclear bombs. After years of endless appeasement and empty statements from politicians on both sides of the political aisle in this town, President Trump is finally the man of action. President Trump is holding these monsters accountable and permanently extinguishing their nuclear ambitions. Future generations of Americans will look to this moment as the moment where the specter of a nuclear armed Iran ended. At the beginning of Operation Epic Fury, launched last weekend, President Trump laid out clear objectives to the American people on what the U.S. military seeks to accomplish through these major combat operations. Number one, destroy the regime's deadly ballistic missiles and completely raze their missile industry to the ground. Number two, annihilate the Iranian regime's navy. And so far, we have destroyed more than 20 Iranian ships, including their top submarine last night, using a torpedo for the first time since World War II. There is not a single Iranian ship underway in the Arabian Gulf, Strait of Hormuz, or the Gulf of Oman. Number three, Operation Epic Fury will ensure the regime's terrorist proxies in the region can no longer destabilize the region or the free world and attack our armed forces. And thus far, Iran's proxies are hardly putting up a fight. Number four, this mission will guarantee that Iran can never obtain a nuclear weapon. It's safe to say that thus far, Operation Epic Fury has been a resounding success. American forces have struck more than 2,000 targets, destroying hundreds and hundreds of ballistic missiles, launchers, and drones. As the Department of War said this morning, we expect to have complete and total dominance over Iranian airspace in the coming hours, clearing the skies for our brave warriors to continue achieving these noble and long sought after objectives. There's been a lot of misreporting and intellectual dishonesty from the American media on why President Trump decided to launch this operation. So let me remind you, Operation Midnight Hammer, which took place last June, obliterated Iran's 3 major nuclear sites. Yet the terrorist Iranian regime has remained fully committed to rebuilding its nuclear program. How do we know this? Because Iran has pursued this path of war and violence despite President Trump dispatching 2 of his top and most trusted negotiators to engage in exhaustive and good faith negotiations to try and reach a deal. And the world knows this president's preference is always peace and diplomacy first. Look no further than the 8 additional global conflicts he has ended in the past year as proof. Unfortunately, the terrorist Iranian regime refused to negotiate in good faith. They chose this path of violence and destruction, and they are reaping the consequences of their horrible decision. The regime did what they always have done. They lied, they delayed, they tried to string the United States of America along. They wanted to buy themselves time to continue building ballistic missiles and other deadly weaponry that could harm our U.S. personnel and troops in the region, and to continue aggressively pursuing their unacceptable nuclear ambitions. U.S. negotiators offered to lift crippling sanctions on Iran and even provide nuclear fuel to Iran at no cost to support a civil nuclear power program. They additionally had the opportunity to accept U.S. support as an investor in potential projects to develop peaceful nuclear energy together under a mutually agreed upon framework. Yet in response, Iran would have to forfeit their enrichment capacity once and for all. But Iran rejected. They accepted none of these generous and unprecedented offers by the United States. Simply put, they refused to say yes to peace. And their refusal made clear that their number one priority was building a nuclear weapon with which to threaten the United States of America. Again, the country they have been chanting death to for nearly 5 decades. Let me state this again clearly. Iran rejected the path of peace because the terrorists in charge of this regime wanted to build nuclear weapons to use against Americans and our allies. President Trump made the determination, a courageous determination and decision, that the path the United States was on with Iran had only one outcome: massive death and destruction at the hands of a nuclear-armed terroristic regime. That path of death and destruction and threats against the American people have ended with Operation Epic Fury. Operation Epic Fury has forged a new path that will better ensure the security of the United States and our people. The terrorists made a bet that President Trump would be like many of his predecessors, that he would just talk and he would refuse to enforce his clear red lines. But that has proven to be a catastrophic error in judgment. When President Trump makes a threat, and I have reiterated that threat many times from this podium to all of you over the past year, President Trump does not bluff. The president's words are backed up by the mightiest warriors in the world who possess the most sophisticated capabilities this world has ever known. 49 and counting of the most senior Iranian regime leaders, including the supreme leader, have already been wiped off the face of the earth. Make no mistake, killing these brutal terrorists is good for America and makes the world a much safer place. I want to also extend our prayers and condolences to the families of the 6 U.S. military service members who have been lost in Operation Epic Fury. These heroes represent the very best among us. They laid down their lives in defense of our country, and we will never forget their legacy or their sacrifice. As the president said, we grieve for these American patriots and their families as we continue the righteous mission for which they gave their lives. President Trump intends to attend the dignified transfer of these American heroes to stand in grief alongside their families. I understand the Department of War is working on scheduling this transfer, and we will provide updates at the appropriate time. Finally, the Trump administration is also doing everything within our power to protect Americans in harm's way. Since the launch of Operation Epic Fury, more than 17,500 Americans have safely returned home from the Middle East, with over 8,500 American citizens returning home to the United States just yesterday alone. If you are a U.S. citizen in the Middle East looking to return to the United States, the Secretary of State asks that you please register with the State Department at step.state.gov. The State Department will identify where you are and provide travel options directly to you. The administration is already rapidly chartering flights free of charge and booking commercial options, which we expect to become increasingly available as time goes on and the success of this mission further comes to fruition. I know the President and Secretary of State Rubio have been in touch as well with our allies in the region directly about this problem, making it clear that it is a priority of the United States of America to bring every American home. The Trump administration will not rest until every American is home safely and until the terrorist threat from Iran has been completely destroyed. With that, I'll take your questions. Eric, why don't you kick us off today? Thank you for being here.
Caroline, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here. As you mentioned, Iran's regime, its leadership has largely been decimated. Do we have a sense right now of who is actually calling the shots in Iran? And we're also hearing reports that the Supreme Leader's son may be named his successor. Do you have any more information about that? I just had a quick follow-up as well.
Sure. We've seen those reports as well, of course, and this is something that our intelligence agencies are closely monitoring and looking at. The truth is, we'll have to wait and see. The president has said repeatedly that the objectives of Operation Epic Fury are the 4 military objectives that I laid out for you previously: to destroy Iran's navy, to destroy their ballistic missile capacity, to ensure their proxies in the region can no longer harm Americans, and to also ensure that they can never obtain a nuclear weapon. As for what comes next for Iran, the president has said, of course, it's a good thing for the United States to want freedom for the Iranian people. And ultimately, we hope that freedom rests in their hands.
Caroline, we see the Arab and Muslim nations coming under fire as well. President Trump's vision for the region has been to bring the Arab and Muslim nations to the table together. Abraham Accords, obviously, with Israel. If this regime topples, could we see a new day in the region and really a new Middle East come out of this when the dust settles?
Well, though the greatest deterrent to true and long-lasting peace in the Middle East has always been the rogue Iranian terrorist regime. And our Arab and Gulf partners in the nation admit that, as well as, of course, our close friend and ally Israel. We have seen all of the Arab partners in the region come together during this time on the phone with President Trump, many of them commending him for this bold and brave action to protect American troops and our bases in the region that are housed in many of these Arab and Gulf states. And I know that many of these regional partners are contributing their air defense capabilities as well. Jordan, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, and the president continues to be engaged with all of them. Welcome. Garrett.
Also, too, Bill, humor me. Axios, I think, was the first to report this morning this phone call between the president and Prime Minister Netanyahu, saying that Netanyahu had given the U.S. this information about where the Ayatollah would be and that he'd be with his deputies on Saturday. How important was that information in the president making the decision to strike where and when he did?
I think it was important with respect to the timeline. But I think the president, prior to that phone call, had a good feeling that the Iranian regime was going to strike the United States assets and our personnel in the region. And the president was faced with a choice. Does the United States of America use our military and our capabilities to strike first, to take out this threat that has been threatening our country and our people for 47 years? Or is he going to, as commander in chief, sit back and watch as the rogue Iranian regime attacks our people in the region? That's obviously an unacceptable decision. For the second choice there is unacceptable to the president, which is why he made this decision. As for where the Ayatollah was going to be, that obviously had an impact on the timeline of the operation, but not quite the president's decision in its entirety.
And then on the way that the public is viewing this, we were sitting here last week. I asked you if the president was going to make this a big part of the State of the Union, if he felt like he had to sell the possibility that he'd do strikes like this. We're now 5 days on, hasn't done kind of the traditional speech to the nation part of it. Does the president believe the country supports the actions that he's taken so far in Iran?
I think he does. And I think the president knows the country is smart enough to read past many of the fake news headlines produced by people in this room, that this action was unjustifiable. Again, this is a rogue terrorist regime that has been threatening the United States, our allies, and our people for 47 years. And the American people are smart enough to know that. And they've also been smart enough to listen to the president himself, not just over the past year in this second term, but during his first term as president, and also for the past 40 years of his life. This is a president who has been remarkably consistent on this issue, that Iran can never obtain a nuclear weapon. And the president tried peace through diplomacy exhaustively and extensively. He and his team gave it their best go, and the president ultimately came to the determination of that peace was not a pursuable path. The Iranian regime, they want death, they want destruction, they want to kill Americans, and that's unacceptable to this president. It's intolerable to him as commander-in-chief. Jackie.
Thank you, Don Cato.
Obviously seen the update from the State Department on the 17,500 Americans that have already come back, including some 8,000 just yesterday. There are still 6,000 that are looking to get out, as I understand it. And just in the context of what you just told Garrett about the president's decision on a timeline, if he had decided to do this strike before receiving, the specific intelligence about the meeting on Saturday, should there have been more done in advance of the strikes to try to get those Americans in the region resources and information to get home before day 3 of the war?
There was many signs put out by the State Department, and I wish that everyone in this room would report on them. The Secretary of State issued level 4 travel advisories dating back to January for many of these countries in the region. On January 14th, the U.S. mission to Saudi Arabia advised personnel and Americans to exercise increased caution and limit non-essential travel to any military installations. On February 11th, the U.S. Department of State Consular Affairs shared a list of countries with level 4 do not travel advisories. You can't be much more clear than that. Do not travel to these following countries. On February 23rd, the U.S. Embassy in Lebanon ordered non-emergency government personnel and family members to leave Lebanon due to safety risks, and we helped them do that. On March 2nd, the State Department urged U.S. citizens to depart Lebanon immediately. With respect to Iran, on February 27th, the Secretary designated Iran as a state of sponsor of wrongful detention and stated no American should travel to Iran for any reason. And again, on February 27th, the U.S. ambassador to Israel warned Americans to leave Iran, and they provided travel advisory alerts through the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. So the State Department was all hands on deck on advising extreme caution and do not travel alerts to Americans in the region. With respect to the Americans who are still in the region now, again, the State Department is asking that they register at the website so they can directly identify you. And we are actively and rapidly working to charter flights. There is some commercial flights that are taking off intermittently from these countries, and we plan to get Americans on board as quickly as possible, again, free of charge to them. And we have some additional measures that I think will be announced in the coming days. Again, I can also reiterate from the president's perspective, this is something something he's brought up directly with our allies and partners in the region, that we expect their help in getting Americans home. And we will do that, and we will not rest until every single American is returned home safely.
Thank you. And then one follow-up just on how people might be experiencing this at home. With respect to the economy and the cost of oil spiking, is there a need to start those Navy escorts in the Strait of Hormuz now to sort of blunt the impact to people? And also, because Spain is a member of the EU, does that at all put a wrinkle in the president's plan for a trade embargo with them?
With respect to Spain, I think they heard the president's message yesterday loud and clear. And it's my understanding over the past several hours, they've agreed to cooperate with the U.S. military. And so I know that the U.S. military is coordinating with their counterparts in Spain. But the president expects all of our European allies, of course, to cooperate in this long sought after mission, not just for the United States, but also for Europe, to crush the rogue Iranian regime that, again, not only threatens America, but also threatens our European allies as well. With respect to oil prices and the economy here at home, of course, this is something that Secretary Bessent, Secretary Wright, the National Economic Council of Energy, that is led by Secretary Burgum, has been long working on and well in advance. Yesterday, President Trump announced the U.S. Development Finance Corporation will provide political risk insurance at a very reasonable price for crude carriers and cargo ships operating in and around the Gulf. And as you pointed out, Jackie, the president said, if necessary and when appropriate, the U.S. Navy will begin escorting tankers through the Strait of Hormuz. I think it speaks to why this action was so necessary, that ultimately the energy industry is going to benefit from the president's actions with respect to Iran, because Iran will no longer be controlling the Strait of Hormuz and restricting the free flow of energy, which, as you all know, controls 20% of the world's global oil supply. Sure.
Thanks, Caroline. The president said yesterday there wasn't time to make evacuation plans because this all happened so quickly. Given how critical the president has been of the chaotic evacuation from Afghanistan by the last administration 5 years ago, why wasn't there more of a focus on evacuation plans from the Middle East that could have been at least put in place, ready to go before the strikes this weekend?
Again, I just laid out for you that there have been plans in place, and that the State Department has been very clear to the American people traveling within this region not to travel to these regions. We gave notices to leave immediately the countries where these Americans were within. And unlike the previous administration, we actually have a number. We actually have identified the number of people in the region who have requested help. We are in direct contact and engagement with them. And you have to keep in mind, there's a few thousand people who have requested assistance to come home in comparison to the millions who we understand are in the region. So we will help every single American who wants to come home if they're making that request of the State Department.
Americans who called the State Department hotline as recently as last night were being told, we can't help you. You have to make your own plans.
Well, the line was updated, and I expect every single person in this room to report on that accurately, so that information can be relayed appropriately to your audiences and to the American people. I think as journalists, you all have a responsibility to let them know that the line has been updated accordingly with the proper guidance, because I saw many people in this room very quick to do selfie videos with the line yesterday, but not so quick to report on the corrected message today. So that is something the administration quickly worked to address, and we have fixed that problem. However, we're also pointing to people to the website, again, to register so that we know exactly where you are. So when there are commercial flights moving into that area, when there are chartered flights moving into that area, we can get Americans on planes as quickly as
Do you
possible.
have any details on how many charter flights have been able to get out of the region so far with Americans on board?
I don't have an exact count for you, but I know that we're working on chartering many flights. As soon as we were doing it yesterday, we're doing it again today. And you should not expect us to detail exactly when these flights are taking off for obvious reasons. The Iranians have shown that they are not going to hesitate to target civilians in the region, which is completely intolerable. But for safety and security reasons, we're not going to be broadcasting when flights full of Americans are going to be taking off, obviously. Danny.
At the top there, you said that the Iranian regime is being absolutely crushed. Can you explicitly say then whether or not regime change is a goal of President Trump's operation?
The goals of this operation have been made very clear, Danny, and the president has said them in his speech when he launched this operation and released that video in the middle of the night to all of you and to the world. The stated military objectives of Operation Epic Fury are as follows: eliminate Iran's ballistic missile threat, destroy their naval capability, disrupt missile and drone production infrastructure, sever their pathway, and end their pathway to nuclear weapons. And I can report, as you all saw from the Pentagon today, that thus far this operation has been remarkably successful. Again, we're moving towards complete and total control of Iranian airspace. We have continuous 24/7 strike operations ongoing. We've had more than 2,000 targets that have been struck. Nearly 2,000 munitions have been employed. The first 24 hours of this campaign were described nearly as twice the scale of the 2003 shock and awe campaign. And we've seen that the enemy, the Iranian rogue regime, their retaliatory strikes against the United States and the threat reduction has reduced significantly. If you look at the Iranian ballistic missile launches, they're down 86% from day one levels. So while the United States military continues to increase its complete dominance over this rogue regime, they are weakening day by day.
Regime change is not a phrase that you would want to use.
Again, Operation Epic Fury, I just detailed the goals and objectives of this very quickly. But obviously, as the president has said numerous times, do we want to see Iran being led by a rogue terrorist regime? No, of course not. So any day the United States of America is taking out a terrorist is a good day for our country and a good day for our people.
So given that point that you just make about the United States wouldn't mind seeing the government overthrown, certainly President Trump has talked about wanting to see Iranians overthrow the government. Has the president considered at all kind of how he views a U.S. role, if any, in Iran post-conflict?
I think it's something the president is actively considering and discussing with his advisors and his national security team. But again, right now, the focus minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day is on ensuring the quick and effective success of Operation Epic Fury. Sure, go ahead.
I want to ask you about the U.S. munitions
I
stockpile.
don't even know who's speaking because I wasn't looking at you. You can ask a question and then I'll go to you.
I want to ask you about the U.S. munitions stockpile. President Trump posted on Truth Social on Monday that the U.S. still has a good supply of weapons, but that we're not where we need to be. What does he mean by that? And does President Trump then want to ask on Congress to pass a supplemental to increase funding for missile interceptor systems like the ones being used to defend U.S. bases in the Middle East from Iranian missiles?
I don't have any updates for you on congressional asks from the president. As you know, under this president, we have significantly increased our defense budget, which is a good thing for the United States, for our national security, and for protecting our homeland. With respect to munitions, ammunition, weapon stockpiles, the United States of America has more than enough capability to not only successfully execute Operation Epic Fury, but to go much further. And we have weapon stockpiles in places that many people in this world don't even know about. However, the president in that post was pointing out that unfortunately, we had a very stupid and incompetent leader in this White House for 4 years who gave away many of our best weapons for nothing, for free, to another country very far away by the name of Ukraine. So the president was pointing out how that was an unwise decision, but nevertheless, don't doubt the strength and the might of the American military. And I will also add, President Trump has rightfully been calling on defense contractors in this country to rapidly and aggressively produce American-made weapons because they are the best in the world. And the president always likes to get things done as quickly as possible. And so he's been quite vocal in his efforts to try to speed up our defense industry to protect our homeland.
Caroline,
Go ahead.
Caroline, could you tell us about the president's current thinking about ground troops and whether they could be used if they were to be sent into Iran? What would they be used for? What's the situation of that?
Well, they're not part of the plan for this operation at this time, but I certainly will never take away military options on behalf of the President of the United States or the Commander-in-Chief, and he wisely does not do the same for himself. I know there's many leaders in the past who like to take options off of the table without having a full understanding of how things could develop. So again, it's not part of the current plan, but I'm not going to remove an option for the president that is on the table. Sean.
Did the United States airstrike a girls' elementary school and kill 175 people?
Not that we know of, Sean, and the Department of War is investigating this matter. And I would just tell you very strongly, the United States of America does not target civilians, unlike the rogue Iranian regime that targets civilians, that kills children, Iran that has killed thousands of their own people in the past several weeks and uses propaganda quite effectively. And unfortunately, many people in this room have fallen for that propaganda. So I would caution you from pointing the finger at the United States of America when it comes to targeting civilians, because that's not something that these armed forces do. Reagan.
Thanks, Caroline. Prior to the Iran conflict, the SAVE Act was really the focus of the news cycle. Is the SAVE Act still a priority for the administration?
Absolutely.
Could you just provide an update on the administration's talks with Congress to get the SAVE Act through?
SAVE Act is absolutely still a priority for this president and the administration. The focus, of course, of much of the president's time right now is on ensuring the success of Operation Epic Fury, but the president can walk and chew gum at the same time, and he's very much continuing to focus on the issues that matter here at home for the American people, including the passage of the SAVE Act, including on bringing down the cost of living, which is why you'll see the president in about an hour and a half at the Ratepayer Protection Pledge Roundtable, where he will be sitting with big tech companies, with AI companies who are building in communities across the country and have pledged to pick up the cost of the electricity tab in these small towns and communities across the country, which is a great thing for American consumers. So you'll be hearing from the president directly on this very important domestic agenda item later this afternoon. And it's something that he mentioned in his State of the Union address. So check it off the list as another promise made and kept by this president. Sure, go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. I just wanted to get back to Danny's question. So those 4 objectives that you read out do not explicitly include regime change. If those objectives were achieved and the Islamic Republic still existed, would that be an acceptable outcome?
That's a hypothetical question that I'm not going to engage in. Again, right now, the president and the commander-in-chief are focused on executing the success of Operation Epic Fury, which we are already doing so in a very tremendous and impressionable way. Stephen.
Thank you, Caroline. 2 questions. The Trump administration reportedly is considering arming Kurdish forces in the hopes of inspiring a popular uprising in Iran. Could you comment on that report?
I can comment on the fact that the president has held many calls with partners, allies, and leaders in the region, in the Middle East. He did speak to Kurdish leaders with respect to our base that we have in northern Iraq. But as for any report suggesting that the president has agreed to any such plan is completely false and should not be written.
President Trump was saying yesterday that he is okay with someone from within taking over in Iran. He spoke about how Venezuela he saw as a successful model where Delcy Rodriguez took over and had a better relationship. Iran's President Pezeshkian, he took office in 2024 as a relative reformer. He's part of a 3-man council now replacing the supreme leader. Does President Trump see him as a potential successor who is more pliable?
Again, that's another hypothetical, and I haven't spoken to the president about this specific individual, so I don't want to get ahead of him on any assessments that should be made.
Thank you. Yesterday, the president acknowledged that oil prices will be a bit high. As for gas prices here in the U.S., what is the admin doing right now to counter that? I mean, should they skyrocket? Is there a plan to help Americans right now with those higher gas prices? And then a second question. On the rash that was on the president's neck, the White House physician said it was a preventative skin cream that he was using, but why is the president using this cream? What are they trying to prevent with this cream?
To your second question, I don't have anything additional to add to the physician statement that we provided to all of you on those questions, but I know the statement said that the redness on the neck will dissipate within the next couple of weeks. To your first question about oil prices, thank God we have a president who has exuded American energy dominance over the past year, an administration that is wholeheartedly focused on keeping prices stable as best as we can. Of course, this operation is temporary to protect the homeland, but crude oil prices did fall yesterday. They remain stable today after the president announced steps to ensure the stability in global energy markets. Again, those include the DEC offering reasonably priced political risk insurance and the potential for the U.S. Navy to provide protection for the flow of energy through the Strait of Hormuz. It is the president's belief and his economic team's belief that the economy continues to be very strong. It's robust and will be able to weather any of the temporary impacts of Operation Epic Fury. John.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. Just to follow up to that, the timeline for making the Strait of Hormuz safe for oil tankers to transport their oil through the Strait, What is that timeline, and what can the president do to speed up that timeline?
I don't want to commit to a timeline, but certainly it's something that is being calculated actively by both the Department of War and the Department of Energy. They're working very closely. Both secretaries are in all of the briefings on this subject with the president, and this is, again, something they're monitoring. And if and when necessary, the United States Navy will provide assistance to escort oil tankers through the strait. Sure, in the blue.
Thank you, Caroline.
You're not in blue, Andrew. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I guess you are, sort of. I'll go to you after.
It's so funny.
You had mentioned about the commercial aircraft being used for the evacuations. What about the use of military aircraft? Would that happen in conjunction with that or subsequent to?
That is something that is definitely underway. And of course, we're going to use that in conjunction. We want as many planes, whether they're chartered, commercial, or military, taking Americans out of the Middle East and returning them safely home. So yes. Andrew, go ahead. You're welcome.
At the top of the briefing, you listed a long list of grievances against the Iranian government, going back to the takeover of the embassy in '79, barracks bombing in the '80s, etc. But no one from the administration has laid out the imminent threat that was supposed to be taken care of by this. And the rationales offered by, say, Secretary Rubio, the president's national security advisor, said that the threat was retaliation against American interests from Iran after Israeli strikes. The president says it was his own feeling that Iran was going to attack. Why is it that across the administration you can't say what the imminent threat against the United States was that required us to launch this? And also, Prime Minister Starmer told Parliament today that his reason that he didn't allow the use of British bases was that he was not satisfied that there was a lawful basis and a viable, thought-through plan. Was there an attempt to provide the UK government with a legal basis for these strikes and a viable, thought-through plan?
To the first question, I completely reject the premise of your question. You have had the President of the United States, the Secretary of War, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the Vice President of the United States, the Secretary of State. And now I am out here today to explain to you exactly what led the President to make the decision to launch Operation Epic Fury. And President Trump does not make these decisions in a vacuum. This decision to launch this operation was based on a cumulative effect of various direct threats that Iran posed to the United States of America, and the president's feeling based on fact that Iran does pose an imminent and direct threat to the United States of America, based on the fact that they are the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism, based on the fact that they were rapidly and aggressively building up their ballistic missile program to give themselves immunity within their country alongside their navy, so that inside their country they could continue to create nuclear weapons and nuclear bombs, which would of course pose a risk to Americans in the region and even Americans one day here at home. And then another point on this is the president found that through these extensive, exhaustive, failed negotiations with Iran, that they were hell-bent on death and destruction. So again, the president was not going to be just another president on a very long list who sat back and stood by and passed the buck of this direct threat to the next administration. The president had a feeling, again, based on fact, that Iran was going to strike the United States, was going to strike our assets in the region, and he made a determination to launch Operation Epic Fury based on all of those reasons. And I would like the media to actually report on all of them, rather than just picking sound bites from one person in this administration and saying, oh, they're contradicting the other person. No, again, these decisions are not made in a vacuum. They are made by the president's feeling that Iran was going to strike the United States and our assets in the region, and he was not going to sit back and watch that happen. The determination was made that the president was going to strike first alongside Israel, and that has obviously been proven to be the right decision and an effective one at that. Libby, go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline. A two-part question for you. First, has the president spoken with the family members of those U.S. service members that were killed? Second, given what you've outlined throughout this entire briefing, I mean, the United States has sunk a bunch of Navy ships. We've hit all of these targets. what can Americans expect the goal to be moving forward now that the U.S. has accomplished all of this? What is victory, given we've even taken out Iran's supreme leader? That was an explicit goal of this.
Again, victory will be determined by the commander-in-chief once the goals and the objectives that we have repeatedly laid out are fully realized. Again, we just in the next few hours will be achieving that dominance over the skies, which means the United States military will be raining missiles and weapons down on Iran to hit these specific targets that have been identified as crucial to take out by the Department of War. Sure, John.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Has the U.S. posture changed in regard to a nuclear North Korea, given the latest strikes on Iran and the fact that the stated goal is to make sure that Iran is not a nuclear country?
I don't have any change in position with respect to North Korea today.
Thank you. A quick follow-up. There's been reports that Ali Khamenei's son has been elected as the next supreme leader. Does the administration think that he is a part of the same regime as his father? Would they like people in the country to rise up and get him out of
There's
power?
reports he's been elected or that he's assuming to be elected. One of the likely options.
Pardon me, what was that?
That he's one of the likely options or that he has been elected. Okay, so we'll wait to confirm until someone actually is elected. Caitlin.
You just mentioned that the president is going to attend the dignified transfer for these families. Given what Secretary Hegseth said this morning, is it the position of this administration that the press should not prominently cover the deaths of U.S. service members?
No, it's the position of this administration that the press in this room and the press across the country should accurately report on the success of Operation Epic Fury and the damage it is doing to the rogue Iranian regime that has threatened the lives of every single American in this room. If the Iranian regime had their choice, they would kill every single person in this room. And so we can all be very grateful that we have an administration and that we have men and women in our armed forces who are willing to sacrifice their own lives for the rest of us in this room and for every American across the country and for every troop that is based in the Middle East. That's what these...
Secretary Hegseth was complaining that it was front page news about these 6 service members who were killed.
That's not what the secretary said, Caitlin, and that's not what the secretary meant. And you know it. You know you are being disingenuous. There is not... We've never had a Secretary of Defense who cares
Drones
more.
get through or tragic things happen. It's front page news. I get it. The press only wants to make the president look bad.
Yeah,
As you know, we cover
press
the deaths of U.S. service members under every president.
The press does only want to make the president look bad. That's a fact. Especially you. No, listen to me. Especially you and especially CNN. And the Secretary of Defense cares deeply about our war fighters and our men and women in uniform. He travels all across this country to meet with them, to connect with them, and your network has hardly ever probably reported on that. You also had the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Chairman Kane, who's a brave patriot, standing alongside the secretary at the Pentagon this morning, again expressing his condolences to these families. And I just told you that the President of the United States will be attending their dignified transfer. So please,
That's not making the president look bad.
So-
That's showcasing that.
and
we
we expect you to cover that as you should. We expect you to cover that as you should, Caitlin. But you and your network know that you take every single thing this administration says and tries to use it to make the president look bad. That is an objectable fact.
Facts.
If you're trying to argue right now that CNN's overwhelming coverage is not negative of President Donald Trump, I think the American people would tend to agree, and your ratings would tend to disagree with that as well. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. On the school
Sure.
strike, back to that for a minute. I understand that the
That's right.
targets
Yeah,
civilian infrastructure. That's what you said. Can you say that there's any evidence right now that it was not a U.S. strike? And then also, you didn't mention Israel in that. Is there any assessment about Israel's potential likely, role in that, if at all?
Again, the Department of War is currently investigating this matter, but again, I will reaffirm that the Department of War and the United States Armed Forces do not target civilians, as does the Iranian regime, who kill and execute their own people. Christian.
Two separate issues, Caroline. First, what can you tell us about the military operation in Ecuador? And then secondly, is the president considering invoking the Defense Production Act to boost munition stockpiles while we are in this conflict?
It's not something I've heard the president consider, but as you know, the president has been in a pretty direct correspondence and public correspondence with defense contractors, asking them to aggressively speed up their manufacturing of American-made weapons, which again are the best in the world. With respect to Ecuador, I would point you back to the statement released by the U.S. Southern Command. On March 3rd, Ecuadorian and U.S. military forces launched operations against designated terrorist organizations. These operations are a powerful example of the commitment of partners in Latin America and the Caribbean to combat the scourge of narco-terrorism. And together, we are taking decisive action to confront narco-terrorists who have long inflicted terror, violence, and corruption on citizens throughout the hemisphere. And with on that, I would also add that this weekend, I'm pleased to announce the president will welcome the heads of state from 12 nations across our Western Hemisphere in Miami, Florida on Saturday. The point of this newfound Latin America summit is to promote freedom, security, and prosperity in our region. The following countries will be in attendance: Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Costa Rica, the Dominican Republic, Ecuador, El Salvador, Honduras, Panama, Paraguay, Trinidad and Tobago, and maybe some others as well. And the president will be speaking with the leaders of this country who have really formed a historic coalition to work together to address criminal narco-terrorist gangs and cartels and counter illegal and mass migration into not only the United States, but the Western Hemisphere, which remains a key and top priority of this president. Thank you very much, everyone. And you'll see the president yourselves in an hour.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Caroline.
Jerome, yes, thank you. Just now, Don Cato said at the top, Jerome, thank you so much. God's good, amen. I know it'll put you guys in a better mood. Let's hear from the, I got you. I got you. You're not seeing whose comments, damage. Yeah. Are you guys mad at me for that Obama video? What's wrong with you guys? Why are you guys fighting with my mods tonight? All right, hang on. I got just the thing. This always makes us feel better. I got you. Let's go. Oh wait, you guys can't see it. What's the video? Can you see it now? I don't know what happened. You can see it? Oh, okay, cool. I don't know what happened. I'm so sorry.
Well, thank
I guess
you very
I got
much.
too
These are
excited.
exciting times. I think you probably want to speak about war rather than this, but this is very important. This is very important, and we're doing very well on the war front, to put it mildly, I would say. Somebody said, on a scale of 10, where would you rate it? I said about a 15. And we're going to continue to do well. We have the greatest military in the world by far. And that was a tremendous threat to us for many years. 47 years they've been killing our people and killing people from all over the world. And I think we have great support. And I think if we didn't do it first, they would have done it to Israel and give us a shot if that was possible. And if we didn't terminate the worst deal, one of the worst deals ever made, the Obama nuclear deal, I call it the Obama nuclear deal, where he gave everything to Iran, including a nuclear weapon. It was a road to a nuclear weapon. Bad things would have happened 4 years ago, because they would have had a weapon 4 years ago if I didn't terminate that deal. So we're in a very strong position now, and their leadership is just rapidly going. Everybody that seems to want to be a leader, they end up dead. And it's an amazing thing that's taking place before your eyes, because for 47 years we were pushed around, and we shouldn't have been. And I think I can say, and you see it as well as I do, you see the tremendous progress that's being made. Their missiles are being wiped out rapidly. Their launchers are being wiped out. They're attacking their neighbors. They're attacking their, in some cases, allies, or not so long ago allies. And, you know, it's really a nation that was out of control, and they would have used it on us if we let them, if we waited any longer. A big factor was Soleimani, the killing of Soleimani in my first term. And maybe the biggest factor was the rebuilding of the military in my first term. And then the B-2s hit the, and I use the word obliterate because it really was, it was a complete obliteration of their nuclear potential. And that set them back very, very seriously. If we didn't hit within 2 weeks, they would have had a nuclear weapon. If we didn't do the B-2 attack a number of months ago, they would have a nuclear weapon. And when crazy people have nuclear weapons, bad things happen. So we're in very good shape now. I want to let you know that, and we will continue forward. But it's a great display of military strength, and I'm very proud to have, with some of the people in the room, both senators and congressmen, we rebuilt, and women, we rebuilt our military during the first term, and we're using it a little bit more than I thought we would have to. Venezuela worked out really great. We have a wonderful relationship with the president and the various representatives, and we're taking out hundreds of millions of barrels of oil, and that goes to our benefit and to Venezuela's benefit. They'll be doing better than they've ever done before, and we will get a big piece of that, and we'll also make life wonderful for the people of Venezuela who have been very, very badly hit. So that's a lot said in a short period of time, but you can witness it for yourself. And now we'll get on to something that I'm very proud of, because it was sort of my idea, like
Very much so.
build your own power plant. And everybody thought I was kidding. They said, really, you can do that? How would you do that? I said, we'll get you fast permits, and you'll build your own plants, but we're going to discuss it in great detail with the biggest people in the industry and some of our great leaders and senators. And congratulations on the Medal of Honor for your 100-year soldier. You know, 100 years old, 101 to be exact. And Daryl's been fighting that he get the Congressional Medal of Honor for many years, Daryl, right?
Mr. President, I give you all the credit for overcoming the lawyers in the Department of the Navy in a way that I thought was amazing.
Yeah.
And
Well, we
nobody
didn't
could
have
have done
too
it but
long
you.
to go. Maybe it'll be a long. We had to get it to him a little bit quickly, but he looks like he's in good shape. He's got some years left, right?
He's planning to come back here for your next Medal of Honor ceremony. And,
He'll be
he's also going to be the star at Tailhook this
Right.
summer if you want to
Right.
come to Reno.
Well, I congratulate you for that success. That was amazing. He didn't stop. I've known him a long time. He never stops. So congratulations. It's very nice. We're here this afternoon for a historic signing that will help keep down utility bills very, very substantially, and electricity prices for millions of Americans, and in many cases for a lot of people that don't really understand why they're going up, but they're not going to be going up. They're going to be actually going down. Today, we followed through on an announcement I made in my State of the Union address last week, as America's largest tech companies officially signed the Ratepayer Protection Pledge. It's a big deal. It's going to have a tremendous impact on electricity costs. We're bringing down all of the costs. We have this little interlude to do what we have to do, because we had it going, but these interludes are very important, especially this one. But the economy has never been like this. We broke 50,000 on the Dow. People thought we wouldn't do that within the first 4 years. We did it in the first year, and we brought 7 on the S&P, 7,000 on the S&P. They said that's even less likely to happen, and we did that too, all within the first year. Under this new agreement, big tech companies are committing to fully cover the cost of increased electricity production required for AI data centers and That would be prices for American communities will not go up, but in many cases will actually come down and very substantially. Because, you know, the data centers, and you people are so big, you're the biggest in the world, but they've developed a little bit of a bad public, they need some PR help, because people think that if a data center goes in, their electricity prices are going to go up, and that's not happening. It's not going to happen. And for the areas where it did happen, it won't happen anymore because they never had this alternative. It's actually going to mean the prices come down. You're going to see how badly they want. Some centers were rejected by communities for that, and now I think it's going to be just the opposite. This means that the tech companies and the data centers will be able to get the electricity they need, all without driving up electricity costs for consumers. This is a historic win for countless American families, and will also make our electricity grid stronger and more resilient than ever before. So that's part of it. It's going to be strengthened up, and they're going to be getting a lot of excess electricity from the data centers where they build their own plants. They're going to be creating their own electricity. We're pleased to be joined today by Speaker Mike Johnson, who's got a difficult job, but he does it as easy as anybody I've ever seen do that job. It's never easy when you have a majority of 2, or sometimes less. I was going to say, sometimes less, but he's amazing. And Energy Secretary Chris Wright, who's worked so hard, and Senators Katie Britt, Bernie Moreno, John Husted. Thank you, everybody. Really great. Thanks, Katie. Representative Darrell Issa and Derek Van Orden. Thank you both. And Derek, thank you. Nice to see you. OSTP Director Michael Kratsios, AI and crypto czar David Sachs, as well as the commissioners of the Federal Energy Regulation and Regulatory Commission, and an audience. In the audience, you have Laura Sweat, David Rosner, Lindsay C., and Judy Chang, all very well-known people, especially in this group of geniuses. We have a lot of geniuses here, and a lot of geniuses that are also very strong people representing labor. We love labor. We love these guys. I also want to recognize the industry leaders here to sign the pledge, and this is a pledge that's going to be a very important pledge to the country and to their companies also. They benefit also very substantially, including President of Google, Ruth Porat. That's a good company. That's big stuff. Google, that's, it used to be U.S. Steel and things like that. Now it's Google and other places. President of Meta, Dina Powell, who was with me. Dina Powell was with me for a long time, and I called up Mark and I said, congratulations, that was a good hire. Right? That was a good hire. She's fantastic, and her husband is fantastic. He's a great senator, and he ran in a place called Pennsylvania, and he ran against somebody that was very tough to win. It was very, very tough to win, and he won pretty easily, actually. People were shocked. I wasn't. You and I weren't surprised, were we? But he's a spectacular man. President of Microsoft, Brad Smith. Thank you, Brad. It's good to see you. Microsoft is unbelievable. CEO of OpenAI, Brad Lightcap. Brad, where are you, Brad? Brad, you're so young. Look at how young. I think you have to be young in that world, perhaps. Thank you, Brad. CEO of Amazon Web Services, Matt Garman. Matt, thank you, Matt. Very well. Say hello to my friend, right? Doing a good job. CEO of Oracle, Clay Mooskwerk. Mooskwerk. Is that fairly good? I don't know. I'm not sure. I usually don't. I just go right over it and I say Mooskwerk. But how are you? Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I give you a hard job. It's a hard name. You did good. You did well for the difficulty of that name.
That's right. I think so. Thank you very much. And Gwen Shortwell, of XAI, another real leader. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And say hello, right, to a special person. The last administration, their allies in Congress gave us the worst inflation in, I say, the history of our country, but they say 48 years. So I'll take either one. It doesn't matter. The press gets very upset when I say in the history of our country. They get very angry about it, actually. They say it was only 48 years. I say, you know, in some ways, 48 years sounds worse because it's very specific. But it sounds a little worse. But either way, take either one. And the ruinous energy policies were a big reason why many working families' utility bills increased more than 30% during the Biden administration, the worst administration in the history of our country. That's why on day one, I declared a national energy emergency. We had no choice but to do that, and signed an executive order to dramatically accelerate construction of new energy infrastructure, which we are doing at record numbers. And we're rapidly bringing down those costs, very rapidly. We inherited a mess. I say it all the time. We inherited a total mess. And in many cases, we fixed it, but we're fixing it. And we'll always be fixing it. We're going to make it better and better and better. Many Americans are still concerned that the massive energy demand from AI data centers could drive up their electricity bills in the future, and we understand that. By 2035, energy demand is expected to more than triple. Can you believe it? A lot of it is AI, and it's also all these big plants that are being built all over the country. They're coming in from Canada and Mexico, from Germany, from Japan, from South Korea. They're all coming here to build cars again. You know, we lost 54% of our car industry because we had presidents that, honestly, on trade and business, they didn't know what the hell they were doing. I could say the same thing for the chip industry. We lost the chip industry, but it's all coming back. You could have stopped it so easy. All you would have had to do is put a charge or a tariff on. If you wanted to leave the United States, that's fine. You can go to Taiwan or anywhere you want. But if you're going to make your product and sell it back in here, you're going to pay 100% or 200 or 300% tariff. And nobody would have ever left, but they missed that opportunity. But it's not going to matter now because it's all coming. They're all coming back. By 2035, energy demand is expected to more than triple. Under the Ratepayer Protection Pledge, we're signing today, the big tech companies are making 5 important commitments to keep utility prices down for American consumers. First, these companies are committing to provide or pay for all power generation and electricity needed for their AI projects, which is massive. And where possible, they'll add capacity to the grid by building new power stations. So they're going to be making their own electricity. They're not going to be taking from the grid, and they will actually probably, based on what I'm seeing, they're building overcapacity, and they'll be able to sell that overcapacity at very low prices into the grid. In addition to that, we're fixing the grid. Now, if we didn't do this, this was, I believe, I don't know, nobody's going to challenge you, won't challenge me. I think this was my idea. I said, wait a minute, we can't, when I first got involved with AI, they said, we will need triple the energy. Think of this, triple the energy of what we have now. Some people said double. I said, whether it's double or triple, that's crazy. And that was just for AI. It is incredible. And when you see the buildings we're talking about, you start to understand it. But unless you saw buildings that go for miles, buildings that are so big, buildings that cost $60 billion. I said, you mean $60 million? When I first got involved, they said, we're building a $60 billion building. I said, you mean 60 million? 60 million is a big building. It's not that big, but it's pretty big nowadays. They said, no, no, sir, we're going to spend 60 billion. But now it's like 100 billion and 150 billion. And the bottom line, it takes electricity like nobody's ever seen before. And I said, well, with an old grid, even if we fix it really well, which we're in the process of doing, you can't take that and double our electricity. They're going to have to build it themselves. And I told Mark, I actually told Mark, I told Elon, I told people, and nobody believed me. They said, you're going to let us build our own electricity? Because they've been so used to being beaten down and to have people with no ideas how to solve problems, and then the whole thing fails. It's a whole disaster. They said, no, I'm serious. And in one case, they submitted plans, and they didn't do what I told them. And when I called them, I said, why don't you have your plant here? we thought you were kidding. Are you serious? You really? They couldn't believe it in a good way. They said, it's too good to be true. And I said, no, it's not. And here's the other thing. You'll have your approvals within 2, 3, or 4 weeks. It used to take 20 years to get it prior to rejection. So in other words, you go 20 years prior to rejection. They'd vote. I've known many plants where they've been, I knew people, they started off young. They were young trying to get approvals for a stupid plant, one plant. Their whole life was devoted to getting this plant. And around 22 years, in one case, 22 years later, he got rejected. I said, that's not good. He wasted, let's say, half of his working life on getting an approval, and he didn't get. Now we get it in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. When I came in originally in my first term, we had 2 big LNG plants in Louisiana. They were in the 14th year of getting approvals, and they had just been rejected. And I got involved. They were tremendous plants. They're up now. They're working beautifully. They built the 3rd one. They're magnificent. I mean, if you like pipes, this is a plant. The whole thing is, you look inside, all it is pipes. I've never seen anything quite like it. It's like lying 2 or 3 Empire State Buildings on their side and doing nothing but putting pipes into it. So I didn't know exactly what it represented. All I knew is this is what they needed. So I got involved. The first one I got done in 1 day. The second one, I was a little bit slower that week, and it took me 1 week. So I got the first one done in 1 day, got fully approved. And when they called up the head, and I didn't want anything. I don't want anything for myself. I want it for the country. When they called up the head of a company like a Microsoft or like any one of the people in this room, but they called up the heads, they said, no, we got rejected. No, you just got approved. It was 1 day and 1 week, and they were built, and they're in your state, by the way, right? And they are big, and they're doing great, right? And there are lots of pipes, right? That's all I noticed. I said, I've never seen anything like that. Anyway, so for these companies committing to provide or pay for all power generation electricity needed for their AI projects, where possible, they will add capacity to the grid. They're going to be adding a lot of capacity, and I think it's going to be really, and I've seen some power plants. I'm actually more interested in the power plant than I am in information. I said, where do you make the money for this? They said, information. I said, okay, that's good. That's got to be a lot of information though, right? And it's turning out to be true. David, it better be true because you got a big bet. This country has a big bet on it. But it's incredible what they're doing and what they're coming up with. Second, they'll cover the costs of upgrading existing power delivery infrastructure and their energy demand as it requires further investment. So they'll be upgrading existing power delivery infrastructure. They will, third, negotiate separate rate structures with utilities to clearly and cleanly assign them to the costs of new capacity investments and commit to paying even if they do not end up using all of that electricity. They're going to make a commitment. So we're going to have a situation where you're not going to have increased electric bills for homes that are in the area or even outside of the area. And fourth, they'll invest in the local communities where they build and operate, provide workforce development and jobs for skilled Americans like those with us today. We have great skilled people. Electricians, engineers, HVAC technicians, server and network technicians, power plant workers, plumbers, welders, and many others, all people that I've hired. All my life I've been hiring you guys, and you've done a great job. I built a lot of buildings, a lot of good ones. And finally, they will use their infrastructure to contribute backup power to local grids during times of need. So they're going to have a lot of backup power. We're going to have a lot of excess. Basically, we're building massive amounts of electricity, and you're not paying for it at all. And the companies want to do it because this way they can, otherwise they couldn't build. I mean, the option really was not about cost. It was about, there's no way of possibly taking the old grid and doubling it in a matter of months or years. So in short, America's largest and richest tech companies will be funding a colossal expansion of U.S. energy. We'll have, I read where China is building tremendous energy. I know, you got to respect it. But we're building similar amounts. We're building what we need. and we're building it through the private sector. We're building it through great companies. And I've seen some of the plants that these geniuses, they are real geniuses, are showing. And I say, wow, that's really great. You're really doing things in terms of technology with electricity that, frankly, the standard, wonderful power companies probably aren't going to be getting there. Maybe as you build them, they'll be start. But some of the plants that I've seen, Dina, are absolutely unbelievable. So they're going to be producing massive amounts of electricity and energy. The grid, so the American consumers aren't going to have to even think about it. And your electric costs are going to be going down. Now, unfortunately, it'll take a little time to get there. So they'll say, well, you know, I don't know who's going to follow me, but whoever is going to follow me is going to have some big advantage. You know, it happened with Biden where we got a lot of approvals for things, but they take statutorily a year or 2 years. And I got one on medicine that was good, not as good as favored nations, which we just got. That's 80 and 90% drops, okay? Nobody's going to believe it. But I got one on various medicines, and it was good, but it doesn't kick in for 2 years. I said, I hope I win this election because I'm going to get so much credit. And the election was rigged and stolen. And he stood up there one day getting credit. He didn't even know what the hell he was talking about. He got the credit. He was talking about how he did this, and he had no idea what he was talking about, but we were the ones that got it. And I hate that. So this is going to happen again because somebody's going to be getting a lot of credit into the future. But this is really the pretty current future. This is going to go very quickly. This is going to happen almost immediately. The United States is leading the world in AI by a lot. We're leading China. We're leading everybody by a lot. Without this, you wouldn't even, I don't think you could build, Brad, you couldn't build a plant, right? Without this, I don't think you could, you know, you'd have to rely on the grid and you wouldn't be able to do that. So the United States is leading by a lot. We're leading everybody. And it's not only, you know, other countries are very much into it. They all want it. But we're going to be dominant in this field, which is very important. In crypto, we want to be dominant. We want to be dominant in everything we do. And this agreement will ensure that America can maintain the most advanced AI infrastructure on the planet without American families being forced to pick up the tab. And that's why the early ones, they hook up to the electric utilities and they can't produce the kind of numbers electric-wise that they want, and they end up raising the rates. It's not going to happen anymore, and now it's going to go the opposite way. They'll make a lot of money, and electric rates, we actually think they're not going to stay. I think they're going to actually, Chris, they're going to actually come down. So your electric bills will actually come down. It'll take a little while, but not long. So this new strategy, never tried before in any country, will pave the way for continued American dominance in energy and technology working together. So you're going to have great energy sources because you're going to build them yourself. And if they're not good, you'll make them a little bit bigger and better, right? But again, a lot of people, it took me 6 months to convince people that I was serious about this. And we have a very big key to what we're doing is Lee Zeldin. He's in charge of the environmental department and energy. And the job he's done is incredible, getting you fast approvals. So some of the plants are starting and they're coming in. I say, Lee, 2 weeks for natural gas. Don't worry about wind. Forget it. It's worthless. You don't get approvals for wind. We don't do wind in this because it's a loser. Except for China, they make all the windmills. You know, China makes all the windmills. The only problem is they don't have wind farms. You ever think somebody's going to have to look at that? How many wind farms have you seen lately in China? They make the windmills. They sell them to the suckers over in Europe. Europe is buying them by the thousands. And I told them for 3 years, this is not going to work out well. And now they're saying I was right. But we are, I say, natural gas, clean, beautiful coal. You know, we don't ever say in the Trump administration, you're not allowed to use the word coal unless you precede it by saying clean, beautiful. And Chris made a beautiful speech about 3 weeks ago. And he took me very, very seriously. And every time it was about coal. And every time he mentioned coal, it'd say, clean, beautiful coal, clean, beautiful coal, clean, beautiful. I said, Chris, easy. It sort of stepped in the speech a little bit. It was a little much, but we got the point across. That coal is clean and beautiful. Well, look, it's so many of the nations that are working are using coal, and you can do things with coal today that are incredible in terms of the environment and in terms of cleanliness. But I said 2 weeks for oil and gas, coal, and for nuclear power plant, maybe take 2 or 3 weeks. You can add on an extra week. But Lee Zeldin has done an amazing job in getting you all of the permits that you need, because normally that would take many, many years, and they're already building the plants. They're being built all over the country, and they are incredible. So with that, I'll introduce Chris Wright, who's we were lucky to get him. Doug Burgum convinced me he was the best guy. I wanted Doug Burgum for his position, and because I'm very impressed with Doug, he's doing a fantastic job. He said, there's somebody that's better than me on energy. I said, a guy named Chris Wright. He's the biggest in the industry. He's the smartest. He's the best. I say, really? He's better than you? And Doug has a very big ego. So for him to say that was not easy. But I met Chris, and it was sort of love at first sight. He has done some job, and so has Doug. We gave him interior where they have all the oil, and we gave him energy where they take it, right? So we sort of did a friendly merger without going through Congress, because if we went through Congress, it would never get done unless the Speaker wanted to get it done, in which case it would be all right. So, Chris, you could say a few words, please.
You bet. First of all, thank you all for being here today. The reason we're here and the things that are going to happen are because of the people in this room. I want to thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership. Very early on, I mean, first week, I'm in my new job. I haven't had a boss in 40 years, and I'm in the Oval Office adjusting to this. And the president says to me two things very clearly. He says, number one, we have to lead in AI. We have to lead. This is a transformative technology. America must lead in AI. And the old energy policies that were going on would not lead in AI. We need to lead in AI. Number two, the government's a bureaucracy. It's always in the way of things. It's been in the way of AI. We've got to run the government like a business. The businesses who want to invest are our partners, and get them here right away, and we've got to work with those partners. And boy, we have 7 incredible leaders in the room today. We're going to win in AI, and we're going to stop the rise in electricity prices because of the 7 leaders that are sitting around this table. The president said you're going to work with them like business leaders. Ultimately, this is not a negotiation where one side wins and one side loses. We have the same interests. The interest of the businesses is to be embraced by the communities so they can build and develop data centers in their communities. Those data centers that are developed there are going to bring jobs and opportunities for people. They're going to have us lead in artificial intelligence, critical for our economy, critical for our national defense, and critical for our security. The nation that leads in AI will be the military superpower. That has been and must remain the United States of America. But this is a pivot, and this is a transformation. And it's the bold leadership of the president and the bold long-term vision of the business leaders that I am very proud to call partners and friends around this table that have invested that money, that have developed those technologies, that are willing to invest those dollars, and are also willing to fix the biggest problem. We had 30% electricity price rises during the Biden administration, and we shrunk our amount of available dispatchable electricity. That is a train wreck waiting to happen. And the president recognized from the start, we have to lead in AI and we have to stop electricity price rise. And those are not in contradiction. These companies are smart, they're powerful, they're strong, they can build power, partner with them. And that's exactly, all of them embraced it. All of them have spent money to these noble causes. And as we heard, a number of states that have partnered with the people on this table have announced multi-year rate freezes. Indiana's the leader now and the first one filing for a rate reduction. But it is the partnership of these companies and a business focused on government, focused on the American people, that is the transformation. But I could not be more proud to be here. I've got to thank also our FERC commissioners that are here. FERC is a noble regulatory agency that just got bureaucratic and lived in a different time and a different age. We need to make things happen fast.
Could they stand up?
Yes, can all the FERC commissioners stand up?
Because, you know, they're the most powerful people in the country. And I have had more people say, do you know FERC? I said, do I know FERC? What about FERC? And I learned so much about you, and you are the most powerful people in the country. So we want to be very nice to you. Please get us approvals. Please get us those approvals, okay? Thank you all very much. Thank you.
The FERC team has worked hard, smartly, and practically to enable the revolution that's going to happen. America leading in AI and stopping the price rises. Thank you all so much. And boy, one of the other things I'm crazy lucky about is to work as a partner with a guy who has the hardest job in the world and does it with a smile, does it with charm, and does it with grace. Speaker Mike Johnson.
Well, thanks so much, Mr. Secretary. Thanks to you all. It's a great honor to be here with the leaders of tech and industry, the FERC commissioners. They are so very important, and all these folks who help all this happen. Look, only President Trump has the gravitas to be able to assemble the leaders of all these great companies in one room, and also to conceive of an idea like the Ratepayer Protection Pledge. This is an idea whose time has come. I think it's going to be so well received around the country because, let's be honest about it, there are concerns that people have had. There's a lot of misinformation out there, Mr. Secretary, about the rise in energy demand and what that's going to mean for our communities. So it is so meaningful to have leaders, the titans, to come in and say, everybody be calm. This is going to be great. It's actually going to be better going forward. Not only is America going to stay on top and lead and be the strong superpower that we are, we're going to continue to lead on AI. We're going to continue to make the communities better. I'm in the state of Louisiana. A lot of this is happening in Louisiana, Mr. President. It's not just a bunch of beautiful pipes. It's also data centers. Meta's doing a big one. And of course, Amazon's working in Louisiana, and Stack, and so many of the other companies. And our communities are so grateful to have that investment, and also grateful because they're coming in as great corporate partners, community partners, and they're acting responsibly. They're helping to build out the energy grid, and they're making life better, not just with good paying jobs. They're actually making life better in these communities and in our states. And so we're so grateful for that. I like what you said a moment ago. This is a win-win-win across the board. You have everybody who's come to the table in good faith under the leadership of this extraordinary president to make this happen for the country. It's at the perfect time. Trust is not given by communities and local stakeholders. It's built over time. And I think this pledge is a huge part of building that important foundation for the future. America's back, Mr. President. So excited about that. Excited to be a part of this. Thanks so much for letting us be it. Yeah.
I think we'll go with John. Is that all right? John Houston?
Thank you, Mr. President. In places like Ohio, this is a very, very big deal. I know that you know well that if we want to have economic dominance and national security dominance, we need to have technological dominance. And AI and data centers are a big piece of that. And I know that the American people want to win. They want to win this just like you do. We want to be superior to our challengers like China. We want to have AI dominance because that helps give our military, our manufacturing, everybody across the country needs AI dominance if America wants to win. And I know that you're the leader of the America First agenda. You want America to win, but so do the people in places like Ohio, but they're concerned about energy prices, right? They know that they like those folks out there, the construction trades that build these, the plumbers, pipe fitters, HVAC, electricians, the people that build the power plants, the laborers, the Boilermakers. Like, these are working people in places like Ohio that do amazing work to build the data centers, to build the power plants, but people just are worried about their energy prices. And what you're offering today with this roundtable with the Ratepayer Protection Pledge, Mr. President, is great leadership because this solves the problem that people were worried about. And as the data centers build new power plants, it leads to energy stability, affordable, reliable electricity for American ratepayers, helping them win the affordability battle that you're leading on behalf of this great team that you've assembled. And I just want to say thank you for your leadership on this.
Thank you very much, John. And I hear you're doing very well in your race. He's running for a very important seat in a great state that I like a lot. It's always been good to me, and it's going to be good to you, and it has been good to you. So good luck with that. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. President.
You're going to do good. Michael, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. You have been talking about this issue beginning as early as the campaign in July when we released the AI Action Plan. This was a focal point of the speech you gave, talked about it again at the State of the Union. So this is a culmination of this idea that you've been working on for quite some time. And the key to all of this is that American AI leadership should never come at the cost of hardworking Americans' ability to pay their electricity bills. And Frontier AI that all of these great companies work on every day, along with the data centers that underlie them, are going to accelerate scientific discovery. They're going to unlock economic efficiencies. They're going to enable entire new industries to support the prosperity of all Americans. And to continue to lead in AI, these great companies need to make new data centers. We need new fabrication capacity. We need new manufacturing facilities, and we need new power plants to be able to do all this great work. And today, through this pledge, we are challenging all these companies to think bigger when it comes to data center construction by identifying ways that we can drive down the overall electricity cost, ultimately strengthen grid resilience, and to create more American jobs in the communities that choose to build all of these data centers. By signing this pledge, all these companies here are making themselves accountable to you, Mr. President, and to the American people as they strengthen their commitment to benefiting the communities in which they build and they operate. We as an administration are using every tool at our disposal to ensure that the U.S. can build and maintain the largest, most powerful, and most advanced AI infrastructure anywhere on the planet. And today we recognize that building the future requires massive amounts of reliable energy. And I'm grateful to you, Mr. President, for acting so decisively to ensure that the growing demands of energy that we have are never passed to the American households. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dina?
Thank you, Mr. President. It's such an honor to be with you today. I also want to thank your outstanding team for partnering with us. You know, it's been remarkable to watch this transformational moment and you positioning America to lead. Our country has had very big transformational movements before, whether it was coming together, World War II, or the Industrial Revolution. But this is different. The next 3 years, in many ways, sir, are the whole game. And those 3 years, while you are president, you have positioned us to win. You have not only made sure that energy dominance is a key to how we will succeed in the compute needs we need, but you've also done something very important. You've made us all know that it's not about the products, it's about the people. And at Meta, we are so proud of the jobs that we are creating, whether it is in Louisiana or in Ohio. So proud that it's not just extraordinary engineers, it is pipe fitters, it is welders, it is electricians. And I'm particularly proud today to announce that partnering with Senator Moreno and Senator Husted, we have launched a pilot in Ohio to train fiber technicians, some who are in this audience actually today, a very important skill set needed to build data centers. This 4-week program is a new curriculum. When you graduate, you have a license to be a fiber technician and a guaranteed job with Meta. We are also extremely proud to sign the ratepayer pledge today. Also, in Louisiana, as the speaker just said, we have been able to lower the costs of so many Louisiana payers, energy payers, an estimated $650 million over 15 years. So we are proud to say today that we want to fully cover the cost of the energy that we use in our data centers, create jobs and opportunity. But more than anything, sir, we are really proud that we're going to look back and have had the privilege to work with you and know that America won at such a critical time and that we did it really working with the American worker and so many others. So thank you, sir. Proud to be here with you.
So nice. Thank you very much. Jen.
I also want to say, sir, I forgot to say it, you know, it was 10 years ago, way before we were talking about AI, that you said there is honor and dignity in plumbers and in workforce skills training. And you asked Ivanka, as you know, to chair that. 10 years later, we could not have imagined how much we needed all of those jobs and those programs, and you marshaled the entire government to do it. That is having an impact in cities across the country. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Jen. Ruth, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Google is grateful for all that you and your administration are doing to secure America's continued leadership in AI. And to your point, it must be powered by abundant and affordable energy if it is to benefit all Americans. I'm pleased to be here to underscore Google's support for the Ratepayer Protection Pledge. We're committed to assist in all of your work to support American households, American businesses in this exceptional era of innovation. So 4 brief points how we will deliver on this for Americans. First, adding to energy capacity. Consistent with your call to build, bring, or buy energy, we will meaningfully invest across America to bring new energy online, as you have stressed so frequently, to deliver the self-sufficiency that is core to this pledge. In Texas alone, we've contracted to add more than 7,800 megawatts of net new energy generation and capacity to the grid as we grow our data center footprint. And very much to your point, we're committed to continuing to invest to add capacity where we build. And to that end, we will very shortly close on an acquisition of Intersect Power, which is going to enable us to build data centers right next to those new additional power generation capabilities where possible. Second, to protect American ratepayers, we're committed not only to pay for 100% of the energy we use, but very importantly, the infrastructure to support that growth, whether or not we end up using that energy. And I think one example that brings that to life, I recently had the privilege of being in Arkansas with Governor Sanders, and our energy partner there, Entergy, announced that Google's investment covers the full energy costs associated with powering our data center, which contributes more than $1 billion back to Arkansas customers to reduce their electricity costs. I think this is precisely what you were saying we need to do more of, and we're committed to doing that. Third, I get very excited about the topic of workforce development, very much to your point, and the important topic of job creation. Every one job that we create in a Google data center gives rise to an additional 9 jobs in the communities in which we are building that data center. Those are high-skilled construction jobs, electrician jobs, represented by so many of the amazing people here today. It's also jobs across the community, in schools, in restaurants, with small businesses. And we announced, in fact, last week that we're providing free AI professional training for all small businesses across America. And given the clear need for electrical workers in America, we're particularly proud of the work we've led to create an electrician training program. And we're committed to train 100,000 electrical workers and 30,000 new apprentices across the country. On top of that, we're excited about significantly growing these programs. We've heard the pledge. Finally, Mr. President, as you said, the American grid needs to be more resilient. And so we're investing here as well. 2 quick things. We pioneered demand response with data centers. So we, with technology, will move workloads out of the way during extreme weather events to make room for the community. And second, we're applying AI itself to the grid to increase capacity in the grid. So again, I want to thank you. I want to thank you all for convening us. The benefits from AI, responsibly delivered, are immense for America's businesses, for America's communities, and for its citizens. Thank you again for your leadership on this very important point.
Thank you very much. Doing a great job.
Thank you, sir.
Gwen?
Mr. President, I want to thank you for your. Thank you, Brad. I want to thank you for your leadership. Because of your work on this issue, I'm confident that we will win the race with AI with China and succeed in delivering inexpensive, abundant electricity for the American people. As you know, xAI builds huge supercomputers and data centers, and we build them fast. Currently, we're building one on the Tennessee-Mississippi state line. As part of today's commitment, we will take extensive additional steps to continue to reduce costs of electricity for our neighbors. Mr. President, we want to be on your team to deliver a big win for the American people. xAI will therefore commit to develop 1.2 gigawatts of power as our supercomputer's primary power source, and that will be for every additional data center as well. We'll expand what is already the largest global megapack power installation in the world. The installation will provide enough backup power to power the city of Memphis, and more than sufficient energy to power the town of South Haven, Mississippi, where the data center resides. We will build new substations and invest in electrical infrastructure to provide stability to the area's grid. We will build state-of-the-art, we haven't talked about that yet, but this is actually quite important. We will build state-of-the-art water recycling plants that will protect approximately 4.7 billion gallons of water in the Memphis aquifer each year. And we will employ thousands of American workers from around the city of Memphis on both sides of the Tennessee-Mississippi border. We will also commit to deploying our AI technology to make people's lives better, creating a period of abundance where electricity becomes cheaper and people have access to the best goods and services humankind has ever seen. Finally, Mr. President, we commit to take these efforts into orbit. We are currently designing orbital data centers powered by the nuclear reactor in the sky. Launching supercomputers into space will mean even more energy on Earth, as all the power plants that we're building now and power sources we've built will be available to the communities instead of the data centers. I've been in the space industry for nearly 40 years, sir, and I have never seen things move more quickly than under your administration. So thank you for that. Mr. President, you've been strong and clear about building AI that benefits Americans and benefits American values, including demanding that AI is consistent with American values. In July 2025, you signed an executive order directing agency heads to support only those AI models that prioritize truth-seeking and are ideologically neutral. We still fully support that order, and we're fully on board with the Ratepayer Protection Pledge, and I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for your
Thank you very
commitment.
much. Thank you. Would anybody like to say something? We're finished with the official speakers, but we have the most important people in the room and great people, political and otherwise. Would anyone have anything? Please, Daryl.
Perhaps as the California representative here, I can tell you how excited I am about your proposals. First of all of you have major presence in California. And not long ago, I visited the largest site of one that's not here today, Apple. It's in Reno, Nevada, Mr. President. It is 1,700 acres. It goes on, as you said, forever with buildings. It is doing a great job. It is one of dozens. Most of you also have centers being put up in that same neighborhood just outside my state of California. The reason they're there is the availability of power. And the story I just wanted to briefly say that says a lot about the current state versus where you're putting it with the help of industry. They have what you would call huge, beautiful
Can you guys hear me? Listen, is it okay if I need to touch on Iran before I pass out? Are y'all okay with that? Okay. You guys know I can listen to Donald Trump talk all day, but I have a lot to get through tomorrow. Are you guys okay? Yes? Okay, you guys, let me touch bases on it. Now, it's kind of hard to find. It's not that hard, but I wonder if some of the Iranian influencers are being silenced over there, because I would have thought there'd be more videos on what's happening in Iran. Eric, what are you talking about? How much of them? Okay. I know. All right, you guys, let me switch gears real fast before I crash. Wait, what are you guys saying? I can't say. Hang on. Deep cries out to deep. Hoping. Wait a minute. Hopefully this video covers Iran a little bit. Let's see. Oh, you can't see it. Doggone it. Hold on. I always do that.
Rushing to get out. Our investigation into the deadly strikes on an Iranian elementary school was the U.S. explain the new front in the war. Our report on the ground in Lebanon as a new barrage of Israeli strikes rocked Beirut. 500,000 people rushing to get out. our investigation into the deadly strikes on an Iranian elementary school. Was the U.S. behind that attack? What new satellite images reveal? Growing economic fears, oil prices soaring at a record rate as stocks plunge. The airline CEO warning today that tickets are about to go up. Deadly twisters tearing across the heartland. This tornado tearing a building apart, sending debris airborne. Severe storms threatening millions from Texas to Michigan. Was a Wi-Fi jammer used on the night of Nancy Guthrie's disappearance to scramble security cameras?
Iran right now, though.
New clue as investigators ask neighbors if their internet was disrupted that exact night. Bodyguard beatdown. The mayor of San Francisco's security team attacked in broad daylight. What happened next? And there's good news tonight. Let the Paralympic Games begin. Athletes overwhelmed with emotion as they get to compete on the world stage. Nightly News starts right now.
This is NBC Nightly News with Tom Yamas.
And good evening. We are tracking fast-moving developments in the war with Iran. President Trump today setting a new end goal for the war, the unconditional surrender by Iran. And we have new reporting tonight that in private conversations, the president is considering sending in a small contingent of ground troops. We also have a new video tonight. You see it here of dozens of Israeli fighter jets pounding a secret bunker under the late Ayatollah's compound. And this Navy ship carrying Iranian drones destroyed. At the same time, our NBC News investigation into that horrific attack on an elementary school in Iran, revealing it's increasingly likely that the U.S. is behind that strike. We'll have more on that and the impact here at home with gas prices skyrocketing.
I don't know, you guys. Let's see if I can find something better on the. I know that.
We're covering every angle of the story. We want to start with Richard Engel on the ground in Tel Aviv.
More waves of U.S. and Israeli military strikes against Iran tonight, including 50 Israeli fighter jets targeting a secret bunker under the late Ayatollah Khamenei's compound. The Israeli military says it was being used by Iranian officials. And U.S. forces destroying a large Iranian drone-carrying ship. The Pentagon says Iranian drone attacks have plummeted. President Trump posted there will be no deal with Iran except unconditional surrender. As we have new reporting, the president has privately expressed interest in the idea of a small contingent of U.S. troops that would be used for specific strategic purposes inside Iran, according to 2 U.S. officials, a former U.S. official, and another person with knowledge of the conversations. In a phone call with NBC's Garrett Haake, President Trump said he's not considering a U.S. ground invasion of Iran at this time, dismissing it as a waste of time, saying they've lost everything. They've lost their Navy. They've lost everything they can lose. And the White House seems to be rubbing it in, posting memes overnight on X.
You want to see me do it again?
Mixing combat footage with action movie clips. Several former senior U.S. military officials expressing outrage to NBC News, calling the posts undignified and disrespectful to everyone involved in the war. All as Iran is still unleashing attacks. In Bahrain, the government says Iran struck a hotel and 2 residential buildings. No injuries. And the president of Azerbaijan is now threatening to respond to what he called an Iranian terror attack Thursday, drone strikes on an airport and near a school. While in Israel, high school volunteers this morning were cleaning up debris after this building was hit.
I think it's scary, but it's meaningful that we're here, that we're helping here and not sitting in our house without doing anything.
Though Iran still has a major ally, Vladimir Putin. Russia is providing intelligence to Iran on the location of U.S. forces in the Middle East, which could help locate American targets to hit, according to 4 sources with knowledge of the matter. Tom pressing Iran's foreign minister about Russia on Thursday.
And they're actively helping you in this war?
Well, they have always helped us.
All as Americans stuck in the Middle East are returning home. The State Department sending in charter planes as several airports are resuming commercial flights.
I booked like 3 flights trying to get out of Dubai. This one's stuck, and so I'm finally home.
Richard joins us now live. Richard, let's go back to that new reporting from NBC News about the possibility of a potential small ground unit inside of Iran of U.S. troops. The White House is responding tonight?
They are, and our reporting is that no final decision has been made. In a statement, the White House said that the story is based on assumptions from anonymous sources who are not part of the president's national security team and not read into these discussions. Tom.
Richard Engel for us. Richard, thank you. There's a new front in the war tonight, Lebanon, with Israel targeting Iranian-backed Hezbollah there. Israel is sending out evacuation alerts to civilians before it strikes, sparking a chaotic mass exodus. Danielle Hamamdjian is there.
Tonight, devastating explosions in a Beirut suburb as Israel targets Hezbollah, a paramilitary group backed by Iran the U.S. labels a terror organization.
So we are getting a first-hand look of the aftermath of one of the Israeli strikes on Beirut. It's in a densely populated area. It's part of a bombing campaign that is, for now, only escalating.
500,000 people already uprooted across the country of just 6 million, trying to escape the violence, fleeing Hezbollah strongholds in the southern suburbs, seeking refuge in central Beirut with not much more than the clothes on their back. Israeli forces send out evacuation alerts online with no timeline before a strike. A moment captured by Leila Sharour, who has 30 displaced relatives now crammed into her 3-bedroom home. We met Leila and her granddaughter in central Beirut.
When we finish? When? We want that.
You want peace?
Of course we want peace.
The new round of clashes began earlier this week when Hezbollah began firing rockets into Israel, following the killing of Iran's supreme leader. Now the fighting is intensifying far beyond the capital to southern Lebanon. And there are growing fears this war will drag on no matter what happens in Iran.
Danielle joins us now live. Danielle, you heard explosions earlier. What's happening there tonight?
Yeah, Tom, and just in the past few minutes, we started hearing gunfire, possibly a warning that strikes could be coming soon. Tom?
Danielle Hamamdjian for us tonight. Danielle, thank you. Now to our NBC News investigation. It may be the most horrific incident of this war so far, a strike on an Iranian elementary school. No one has claimed responsibility. The Pentagon says it's investigating, but we have new reporting tonight suggesting the U.S. may be behind the attack. Molly Hunter has the details.
Tonight, it looks increasingly likely that a U.S. munition was responsible for striking an Iranian elementary school, according to a U.S. official and another person familiar with the preliminary findings of the U.S. investigation. Iranian officials say the strikes killed more than 170 people, mostly children. Sources tell NBC News the U.S. is still looking into whether the strike could have been the result of bad intelligence or poor targeting. NBC News has geolocated and verified a new satellite image that shows at least 7 impacts, direct hits on the school and a medical clinic on the same compound. In the first hours of U.S.-Israeli operations Saturday morning, airstrikes hit the Shajre Taibeh Elementary School in Manab, Iran. NBC News spoke with a mother on the phone who said her 7-year-old son, Sohail, was killed in the strikes. By the time we arrived, she said, the entire school had collapsed on top of the children. People were pulling out children's arms and legs. The school was built by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps on a compound once home to a military base. But multiple people on the ground, including a former principal, tell NBC News it hadn't been an active military base in more than a decade. Weapons expert Jeffrey Lewis says the satellite imagery shows the strikes were deliberate.
When you look at these buildings that have been destroyed, do they look targeted to you?
The buildings on site were targeted individually and with incredible precision.
Also tonight, Human Rights Watch concludes the weapons used were highly accurate guided munitions. The Pentagon says it's investigating. And at a briefing this week, Joint Chiefs Chairman Dan Kane pointed to the area where the school is located, a strike symbol near the city of Manab. Now, down the road from the school, rows and rows of tiny graves and no official claim of responsibility. Molly Hunter, NBC News.
A tough image to see there. Back here at home, the impact of the war with Iran is taking a toll across markets and at the gas pump. The biggest rise in oil prices ever in a single week. Christine Romans has that part of the story.
1 week into the United States war with Iran, and the cost to the average American is skyrocketing. U.S. crude oil prices topping $90 a barrel today, surging 35% this week, the biggest weekly jump on record. Gas prices up 34 cents a gallon since the war began. Drivers feeling it across the country.
I don't even want to fill it up because I know it's probably going to be in the 90s.
Markets today down again. The Dow Jones Industrial Average above 50,000 just 1 month ago, now down more than 3,000 points since its high. And more pain is expected. United Airlines CEO Scott Kirby today telling CNBC that higher airfares because of fuel prices will, quote, probably start quick. The Trump administration asking for patience. Energy Secretary Chris Wright saying the surge in prices will be short-lived.
Yeah, I think it's of order weeks. I would say in the worst case, but it's weeks, not months.
For now, the critical Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of the world's oil moves through, is practically empty. This animation showing how active the strait was before the war and what it looked like today. Ships anchored outside the strait refusing to pass through. Also today, a shocking jobs report showing a loss of 92,000 jobs in February. Unemployment ticking up to 4.4%.
All right, and with that, Christine joins us now live in studio. Christine, the big question, how high will prices go?
Yeah, one industry analyst, a veteran, told me that if you've got crude oil prices staying here, you're talking about $3.90 next week for gas. And if crude oil prices keep rising, you're talking about $4 a gallon pretty quick.
Close to $4. All right, Christine, we thank you for that. We also have some breaking news. Tornadoes ripping across multiple states.
Wait, y'all couldn't hear me? I was saying that gas is so high here in California. I wish it was at $4. It's not. It's not. It's high. But I'm praying for our country, you guys. I'm still. Let's see. Kaiser. He said Trump is the boss. Let's see. I agree.
Just 1 week into war with Iran, the world is contending with rapidly changing events affecting lives, livelihoods, and the future of the Middle East. Here's what you need to know.
Oh, heck no, damage.
Americans awoke Saturday to the sudden news of joint strikes in Iran by the U.S. and Israel, with President Trump vowing a massive operation and calling on Iranians to take over your government.
The United States military is undertaking a massive and ongoing operation to prevent this very wicked, radical dictatorship from threatening America and our core national security interests. We are going to destroy their missiles and raise their missile industry to the ground. It will be totally, again, obliterated. We're going to annihilate their Navy. We're going to ensure that the region's terrorist proxies can no longer destabilize the region or the world and attack our forces and no longer use their IEDs or roadside bombs, as they are sometimes called, to so gravely wound and kill thousands and thousands of people, including many Americans. And we will ensure that Iran does not obtain a nuclear weapon. It's a very simple message. They will never have a nuclear weapon. This regime will soon learn that no one should challenge the strength and might of the United States Armed Forces. I built and rebuilt our military in my first administration. and there is no military on earth even close to its power, strength, or sophistication. My administration has taken every possible step to minimize the risk to U.S. personnel in the region. Even so, and I do not make this statement lightly, the Iranian regime seeks to kill. The lives of courageous American heroes may be lost, and we may have casualties. That often happens in war. But we're doing this not for now. We're doing this for the future, and it is a noble mission. We pray for every service member as they selflessly risk their lives to ensure that Americans and our children will never be threatened by a nuclear-armed Iran. We ask God to protect all of our heroes in harm's way, and we trust that with his help, the men and women of the armed forces will prevail. We have the greatest in the world, and they will prevail. To the members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, the armed forces, and all of the police, I say tonight that you must lay down your weapons and have complete immunity, or in the alternative, face certain death. So lay down your arms. You will be treated fairly with total immunity, or you will face certain death. Finally, to the great, proud people of Iran, I say tonight that the hour of your freedom is at hand. Stay sheltered. Don't leave your home. It's very dangerous outside. Bombs will be dropping everywhere. When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations. For many years, you have asked for America's help, but you never got it. No president was willing to do what I am willing to do tonight. Now you have a president who is giving you what you want. So let's see how you respond. America is backing you with overwhelming strength and devastating force. Now is the time to seize control of your destiny and to unleash the prosperous and glorious future that is close within your reach. This is the moment for action. Do not let it pass. May God bless the brave men and women of America's armed forces. May God bless the United States of America. May God bless you all. Thank you.
The death toll has climbed quickly. Iran's supreme leader and dozens of senior officials and civilians confirmed dead, and soon after, the Pentagon's announcement of the first American casualties.
America, regardless of what so-called international institutions say, is unleashing the most lethal and precise air power campaign in history. B-2s, fighters, drones, missiles, and of course, classified effects. All on our terms, with maximum authorities. No stupid rules of engagement, no nation-building quagmire, no democracy-building exercise, no politically correct wars. We fight to win, and we don't waste time or lives. As the president warned, an effort of this scope will include casualties. War is hell, and always will be. A grateful nation honors the 4 Americans we have lost thus far and those injured. The absolute best of America. May we prosecute the remainder of this operation in a manner that honors them. No apologies, no hesitation, epic fury for them and the thousands of Americans before them, taken too soon by Iranian radicals. Before I turn it over to General Kane for the operational update, let me speak straight to you, the Joint Force, our warriors on the front lines. This is your moment. This is the generational turning point America has waited for since 1979, and since the rudderless wars of hubris, my generation, our generation, endured. Don't listen to the noise. Just stay focused. Our commander-in-chief is steady at the wheel. We face a determined enemy, but you are better. But we must prove it every single day. History doesn't care if we're tired, if we're scared, or if the fight feels big. It demands warriors who rise anyway. Peace through strength, the warrior ethos, lethality, unity of purpose, those are not slogans. They're the beating heart of what it means to wear the uniform, that uniform. You think clearly under fire. You act decisively in chaos. You uphold the Constitution, and you uphold our country without hesitation. We are not defenders anymore. We are warriors, trained to kill the enemy and break their will. History is watching. Be the force you swore an oath to be: focused, disciplined, lethal, and unbreakable. We will finish this on America First conditions of President Trump's choosing, nobody else's, as it should be. And know this above all: President Trump and I have your back always. Through fire, through criticism,
I agree,
through
Devin.
fake news, through everything. We unleash you because you are the best, most powerful, most lethal fighting force the world has ever seen. May Almighty God watch over you, and his providential arms of protection extend over you. Godspeed, warriors, and keep going.
On Saturday, 28 February at 01:15 Eastern Standard Time, 9:45 a.m. local Tehran time, on the orders of the President of the United States, U.S. Central Command, under the command of United States Navy Admiral Brad Cooper, commenced Operation Epic Fury. As I said, I'm going to walk you through the initial phases of the operation. But first, I want to express my deep condolences and the condolences of the Joint Force to the Department of War personnel killed and wounded in actions thus far. As the Secretary said, they're heroes and represent the best of our nation has to offer. They're true examples of what selfless service means. Our deepest and heartfelt condolences are with their families, their friends, and their units.
Questions soon mounted about the reason for the strikes and their timing. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told reporters before briefing top lawmakers on the Iran war that the U.S. got involved after learning there was going to be an Israeli action.
President declaring war and just Congress
No.
wait. And
What-
was
what-
there an imminent
what-
threat? Did you tell lawmakers that there was an imminent
There
threat?
absolutely was an imminent threat, and the imminent threat was that we knew that if Iran was attacked, and we believed they would be attacked, that they would immediately come after us. And we were not going to sit there and absorb a blow before we responded, because the Department of War assessed that if we did that, if we waited for them to hit us first after they were attacked, and by someone else, Israel attacked them, they hit us first, and we waited for them to hit us, we would suffer more casualties and more deaths. We went proactively in a defensive way to prevent them from inflicting higher damage. Had we not done so, there would have been hearings on Capitol Hill about how we knew that this was going to happen, and we didn't act preemptively to prevent more casualties and more loss of life.
President Trump then seemed to contradict Rubio's remarks, saying it was his opinion that Iran would strike first, and if anything, he might have forced Israel's hand.
Mr. President, did Israel force your hand to launch these strikes against Iran? Did Netanyahu pull the United States into this war?
No, I might have forced their hand. You see, we were having negotiations with these lunatics, and it was my opinion that they were going to attack first. They were going to attack. If we didn't do it, they were going to attack first. I felt strongly about that. And we have great negotiators, great people, people that do this very successfully and have done it all their lives very successful. And based on the way the negotiation was going, I think they were going to attack first. And I didn't want that to happen. So if anything, I might have forced Israel's hand, but Israel was ready and we were ready, and we've had a very, very powerful impact.
And then Tuesday, another angle. Secretary Rubio pressed again, cited a unique opportunity, a likely reference to the discovery by CIA and Israeli intelligence that Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei and top officials were all gathering at the same place at the same time in Tehran on Saturday morning.
Nothing to do with Israel. It has nothing to do with Israel. This operation. There's a general question of why the president gave the green light, and then there's a question of why did it have to happen this weekend? Are you saying it had to happen this weekend because of that Israeli action?
No, this weekend presented a unique opportunity to take joint action against this threat. And we wanted this to have maximum success. We want this operation to be successful at achieving its objectives. I'll repeat the objectives. The president laid them out yesterday. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. It cannot have, and therefore it cannot have the things it was hiding behind to have a nuclear weapons program. What are those things? Number one, we are going to destroy their missiles and their missile launchers. We are going to destroy their capability to make these missiles and these launchers, and we are going to destroy their Navy. Those are the objectives, and this weekend acting at this time gave us the highest probability of success in achieving those objectives, and as the Department of War will brief you, we are on or ahead of schedule to do that. The president had already made a decision to act on the timing. The president acted on the timing that gave us the highest chance of success, and that's what you're seeing play out right now. You're seeing it play out right now, and you'll see it in the days to come. We will systematically take apart their missile program. We will destroy their ability to sponsor terrorism, by the way. We will destroy their factories. We will destroy their Navy. Those objectives are going to be met. We're well on our way to meeting them. It will not be easy. There will be a price to pay for it, but that is a much lower price to pay than having a nuclear-armed Iran.
The Pentagon has been touting military successes with more than 2,000 targets hit, approaching total air superiority in Iran, and the sinking in international waters of an Iranian warship struck by a torpedo from a U.S. Navy submarine for the first time since 1945.
To date, we've hit over 2,000 targets, as Admiral Cooper said in his video last night. We've destroyed more than 20 Iranian naval vessels, including, in addition to the frigate outside of the area, one submarine, and effectively neutralized at this point in time Iran's major naval presence in theater out there. As the Secretary showed the video, for the first time since 1945, a United States Navy fast attack submarine has sunk an enemy combatant ship using a single Mark 48 torpedo to achieve immediate effect, sending the warship to the bottom of the sea. I want to remind everybody that this is an incredible demonstration of America's global reach. To hunt, find, and kill an out-of-area deployer is something that only the United States can do at this type of scale. Over the next 24 to 48 hours, CENTCOM will continue to strike infrastructure and naval capability, and we'll continue to assess our progress against the military objectives. It does take time for us to collect that information and to assess en route. Much of our intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance capability is currently hunting and killing ballistic missile launchers and one-way attack capability. We're precise in that assessment, and we call balls and strikes in that assessment.
But the cost of war is already hitting American families. 6 American soldiers have now paid the ultimate price, and the president and other officials warn more casualties could come.
I would say Sunday. I'm sure everybody started waking up that morning, and you heard at the time that 4 people had been killed and many injured. And I think we talked with our son in Italy at the time, and said he had talked to Declan, and Declan just was checking in with him. And the reason being is Declan was 9 hours ahead of us. He was 2 hours ahead of his brother. So he called his brother. So Declan had been sending us updates every 1 to 2 hours, like, hey, everything's still good. I'm good, which goes to show you, you know, he was thinking about us, like, don't worry about me, and so forth. So he had checked in with his brother, and kind of based off of timing, you know, and what we know so far, we don't know specifics, but we're just making an assumption based off of timing that it was shortly after that phone call that he had gotten off with his brother, that this is when that happened, and his operations center got hit. So, yeah. So, but at the time, you know, my wife had sent another message to him. I won't say what that is, but had sent a message and we didn't hear back, which, you know, they may not always be able to respond. But I will say most of us started to wonder, and your gut starts to get a feeling. And then we go to bed fairly early, so we got ready Sunday night to go to bed, and we had just turned the lights off and went into the bedroom, and the doorbell rang at 8 p.m.
I still don't fully think it's real, and I didn't think it was real when they told us, because I just remember all of our conversations about what he was going to do when he came back, and so I'll just be sitting and thinking about it, and then it's really hard, and I didn't have like the same phone call like this weekend that my dad and like my brother did, and so I just really wish I got to tell him I love him one more time, because he was just so amazing, and he always in front of everybody just was like really strong. He never let his emotions really show. But I don't know. I can't help but think just he was my little brother, and he was probably really scared, even if he didn't want people to know. So I just wish he could have known one more time that we all loved him, because he was so amazing and kind. And like my dad said, like he didn't like speak like that much, but like every little thing he did was just so, I know I'm just saying he was kind, but I don't know. He was just like the best little brother you could have.
Israeli President Isaac Herzog told CBS Evening News anchor Tony Dokoupil that Israel is not asking for boots on the ground, while the White House is still refusing to rule out that option.
Can you clarify what this war is about? Is regime change the goal?
Not necessarily. What is the goal is Middle East change, meaning if you look at what we've gone through in the last generation, Iran consistently spread terror, hate, and destruction all over the region and the world. And it's about time that everybody tells Iran, guys, we're fed up. This has to change one way or another. If it will lead to the regime change, the more the better. But right now, undermining their capabilities in long-range missiles, in spreading terror with their proxies, in rushing to the bomb, and a lot of other things that they've been working on. I'm asking myself for years already, why does Iran set up terror cells in Brazil, in Australia, in Britain? And there's a grand plan here. And if you read what they think, and if you listen to what they say, you understand they have a grand plan. And we're here to block this grand plan and bring a new change to the region.
Are you not concerned that without a clear end game, what you get could be worse than what you have?
It's always something that one needs to take into account. History teaches us that these things can happen. But there's not much of a choice when you know, okay, that they want to jump from 2,000 long-range missiles to 20,000. When you know that they have invested all their nation's resources and money in creating havoc in the Middle East as you try to make peace with Muslim countries. When you know that they have another new secret plan to rush to the bomb, you have to take action. That's it. And it comes from a certain ideology and a certain leadership that brought this on their people. And then you see how they butcher and kill tens of thousands of their people, and you understand there's no mercy for anybody. No mercy, definitely. No mercy for moderate Islam, no mercy for Jews, and no mercy for Christians.
The Iranian people, cut off from the world and under continued bombardment, have no clear leadership and an increasingly uncertain future, which comes as questions mount about a potential U.S. airstrike on at least one civilian target in Iran, a girls' school.
It's a war fought mostly in the skies, but on the ground, civilians are bearing the brunt. In Iran, thousands poured into the streets for a mass funeral for what health officials there say were at least 175 girls killed in an elementary school. And nearby, rows of graves seen awaiting coffins. Israeli military spokesman Nadav Shoshani.
See them line about some of the details of it. I can tell you that we haven't found any connection to IDF operations.
So you're saying it's not the IDF that attacked that school, but you're also suggesting that it might be some sort of misinformation?
I'm suggesting taking caution when using information that's provided by a regime that massacres their own people.
And across the region, commercial jets are grounded. The State Department says around 1 million Americans are stranded. President Trump acknowledging that the repatriation hasn't been smooth.
Why wasn't there an evacuation plan, and who do you send to get people out?
Well, because it happened all very quickly.
Kat Spitzer says that quick reaction left her stuck in Dubai.
That's been a little tough when you sort of hear that the government is kind of like, nope, there's nothing.
And across the region, the dreaded routine of sirens and missiles, and in Israel, bomb shelters.
Just closed the door to the bomb shelter. Dozens of people in here. You can see people bring their dogs, obviously their children. They've just come off the street, and this is the rhythm here in Tel Aviv.
Fleeing that routine is Tamar Rubenstein, who just arrived in Israel for a visit, pregnant with twins.
I'm getting close. I'm 23 weeks, so I didn't want to get to the point where I wouldn't be cleared to travel anymore.
Her exodus, 7 hours by train, then bus to Egypt, then flights to Athens, Munich, and finally Chicago.
So why not just wait until the missiles end and stay in a safe place?
I don't know how long this is going to go on for. There's such a lack of clarity.
Secretary Rubio has said that the U.S. is going to start to organize charter flights at some point soon to get people home. But given that this is an active conflict zone still, that's going to take a lot of coordination and deconfliction. And that means that those flights might be slow to arrive here. Matt Gutman, CBS News, Tel Aviv.
And as the war enters its second week, thousands of Americans in the Middle East are still struggling to get home. More embassies overseas are suspending operations, and regional allies are warning their air defenses are being quickly depleted by a continuing onslaught of Iranian missiles and drones. For CBS News, I'm Olivia Gazis in Washington.
Breaking news tonight as we come on the air. The strikes intensifying on Iran. The war spreading across the...
All right, you guys, I will be back in the... Hey, Adrian, how are you? I'll be back in the morning. Get out of Iran. We haven't officially declared war, though, but we see what's happening over there. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. I have got to lay it down. I'll be back later. Was there any recent missile shower at Qatar? That's what we were just talking about, Adrian. But I'll be back later, you guys, to keep you guys updated on what's happening in Iran and other stuff. But thank you guys for hanging out with me. You haven't seen the news? Oh, Adrian, they're yeah, I mean, when you say recent, do you mean like today? So I'm not sure how recent. Good night, Jerome. But I'll be back later, Adrian, to update you guys. Let me rest. We'll be checking back. Thank you, Adrian. Okay, you guys, I gotta lay down. Jerome, see you later. We'll understand what he said. Right, you guys. All right. Keeping you guys in prayer. I'm praying for our country, and all right, Adrian. Good night, you guys. Sleep well. Have a good day. Bye, Kaiser. I'll see you guys later. Bye. Stay safe out there. Until next time. That number's been all over the place. Hopefully we'll have a more recent update, but you guys know what I'll do. I'll show it to you instead of telling it to you. Dog bone. All right, you guys. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.